Check. 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6. How's it going? And done. All right. Sammish, buddy, you hear me?
Yes, I do. Hello.
How's it going? I'm glad we're able to do this. Hey. Hi, Lolo. How's it going? I'm going to introduce somebody in a few minutes after I do my little introduction thingy that I usually do. This is going to be a fun stream. I'm really excited. Just want to say thank you real quick. Before we even get started, I want to say thank you to Sammish. You're the best. This could be fun.
Hell yeah, I'm very stoked for this.
All right, so let's get right into this. Hi, everybody, especially you who are over in Sammish's stream. I'm Captain Snafu. I'm a historian and anthropologist. I have degrees in both. I'm working on a PhD in history. I'm also a historical consultant, doctoral candidate. I'm a public speaker, Native American activist, and an award-winning scholar. History is my thing. I specialize in indigenous history in particular. It's something that I'm passionate about, and it's something that I really want to share with everybody, as pretty much everybody who's ever been in a chat with me knows. Now, the purpose of this stream, and all streams that I do, is to share and discuss history. It's to promote awareness of issues, past, present, future, to create a community of casual learning where people can come in here unafraid of asking questions and unafraid of being curious about any given subject. So that being said, don't ever be afraid to ask questions. I want you all to have fun at all times, even when we're getting serious, have fun. Just big rule, don't be an asshole. I think that's pretty much a given with everybody's stream. Don't fight. It's not that serious. Subjects are going to come up which are hot button issues sometimes, and we got to roll with it. So just don't fight. It's not that serious. We're here to learn. We're here to have fun. So just, keep it civil. Now, what kind of subjects are we going to be talking about on my channel? Well, that's a little bit hard to explain because we're going to talk about just about anything you can imagine. I've already talked about Native American history, and I'm going to talk about Native American history again. I've had a special guest on comic book history. We're going to be talking World War II, World's Fairs, weaponry, LGBT plus rights, women's rights, art, sussery, architecture, disease and medicine, you name it, we can talk about it. And I'm going to be bringing in guests who are specializing in certain subjects. I'm going to be featuring different people throughout my time streaming here. So I'm going to be bringing as many subjects and topics as I possibly can to you guys in a way that's going to have fun. It's going to be relaxed. And if you guys ever have any suggestions or things that you're curious about, bring it up. I will do my absolute best to make sure it's talked about. Now, I mentioned special guests. Today's special guest is SammishSpook. Fellow streamers, you guys are welcome any day, any time. I love you, and I love working with you. I'm going to be bringing in educators. I'm going to be bringing in activists, qualified academics, people who really know their stuff. I'm also going to be bringing in artists, like today's guest. I'm going to be bringing in digital, traditional artists. I'm going to be bringing in musicians as well, including the short list, Raymond Revel and September Moon, all of which I have personal experience with, and I love these people. They're amazing. My overlay icons and PAG are courtesy of Lolo, who was in chat earlier. Hopefully she's still here. She's amazing, one of the greatest artists I know, and I am so proud of all her work, and I want to show it off every single chance that I get. So, charity and causes. As much as possible of any income from Twitch will be donated directly to charity. Now, it's not going to be all of it. Sometimes equipment breaks. Sometimes emergencies come up. But as much as humanly possible will be donated to charity. Now, why is that? Well, first off, I'm blessed to have a job that pays fairly decently for what I'm doing. But on top of that, I also have a little bit of a charity addiction. I give indiscriminately, even to the point of self-harm. I've been known to donate my entire month's lunch money to one charity just because I felt like doing it. Yet it's not just it's a little issue. I mean, I won't go more than lunch money. Let me just put it that way. I mean, yeah. So anyways, the featured causes are going to cycle and vary. That doesn't mean I don't support them anymore when they disappear. It just means that I'm seeing something else that I think deserves attention. Right now, one of the big things that I'm looking at is the Wellman Project, which gives, it's like Goodwill for teachers. They get collections and donations from people around the community, and they distribute them for free to teachers in order to help them fund their classrooms without getting into their own pockets. Love this community organization. It should be emulated everywhere. And if you have a chance, take a look at their website, see if you can donate. It's a really great cause. On my channel, you will see Jeff, which is my little mascot. He's a crow. I like crows, as you could probably tell just by looking around. You will also see Auntie Anarchy. She is the one that causes all of my screw ups, and when I do screw up, and it's when that's just her showing up and paying a visit. And I also have massive ADHD, so you'll be dealing with me going off topic all the freaking time. It's gonna be a recurring thing. Get used to it. Okay. Now then.
Is that my cue?
Yeah. Guess what? Now it's time for you to talk, Sammish.
Oh my god, it's me. Well, thank you for inviting me, Captain Snack. I really appreciate it. I said I was gonna do it, and I did it. I'm Sammish. You can call me Sammish. I'm also known as SammishSpook on the internet. Twitter, Twitch, Discord, Patreon, wink. I am an artist that often uses video games as inspiration and as my subject. And I work in the video game industry, so those are my credentials. My art is not used in the video game industry, but I am getting there. So that's me in a nutshell.
Okay. So, I'm just going to switch over to your stream so everybody can see what you're working on.
Hell yeah.
Let's do it. All right, there we go. I didn't see that before. That's cool.
I started it while you were talking. I was hoping I'd get a little bit more done, but I was enthralled.
Love it. Well, like I explained to you, and I will have other artists do the same. Whenever I have an artist on my stream, I want them to just draw, have fun, whatever comes to mind when I'm talking, when we're talking, we're having a discussion. Draw it. It's your stream now, pretty much. I'm just here to add a little color to the history. So,
I love color in history, and also just in general.
Yeah, well, it helps that I'm colorblind, so a little extra color is a good thing for me.
Oh yeah, I feel that.
So I want to start something that a lot of people wouldn't expect me to start with when it comes to the video games. So when I say the history of video games, a lot of people believe that really starts with Pong, right? Pong was the first majorly successful at-home kind of video game, right? But I kind of want to start a little bit earlier, because humans have been playing games forever, and while the medium has changed, these games have developed over time, and it's not just a new phenomenon. So if you look at it, you got all the way back into ancient Egypt, you got the first board games, right? And even though today we still have board games, they're not quite as popular as they used to be. These board games, I mean, led to card games and like things like backgammon and chess and the different games that we know and love that have been around for centuries. But most people wouldn't really call that the beginning of video games, right? Because video game implies, video. What I would actually call the beginning of video games is something that lends its name to the term that we all come to know. So back in the 1860s, I believe it was in the 1860s, 1870. Back in 1870, the Atlantic City Boardwalk opened up. I really say that that's actually the beginning of video games. Not because they had video games per se, but because they had an arcade. The arcade was different boardwalk games which could be played for a fee, like we know in arcades that developed later. And that's where we get the name for the arcade. So arcades are just... Whoa, what happened? Oh, there he is. Okay. So, really?
Uh-oh.
There it
Did
goes.
things
Wait,
happen?
it's gone again. Why is it blinking in and out? What the f...
Oops.
Did I
We're
get it
having
now?
some technical issues. Please stand by for those in the snack stream.
E- 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 Yeah, I think I got it now. Anyways,
It's not a snarf stream without problems, Cassie says.
yeah, that's fair. I still have no idea what I'm doing. So, anyways, like I was saying, I really believe that the arcade, the boardwalk arcades, was the really beginning of what we know today as arcades. Now, back in the 1920s and 30s, board games became a lot more popular. Things like Monopoly, things that became household board games, really took off. The Game of Life and Chutes and Ladders, things that you needed a distinct setup in order to play the game. Those really took off. So the practice had been established of household games at that point already, which once the medium caught up, or the technology caught up to what people like to do, that's when video games really started taking the world by storm. So something that I've always been amazed by is just how quickly video games took off. Now, video games, like, it's not something that, like, it's just like all of a sudden overnight happened, right? They've been developing forever. Well, over the span of literally just a decade, just one decade, you went from having literally 0 video games to having dozens of names like Pong and Pac-Man and Space Invaders and Galaga. All those games, it really developed in the 70s. Do you have a favorite game from way back, like those old games?
Oh, like 70s era games. Honestly, that was before my time. I'm an old boy, but that was before my time. Honestly, I'm still very much a fan of Galaga and Galactica as it later came out. Dig Dug, that's probably later actually. Dig Dug's a good one.
Yeah, and then you had the origin of Donkey Kong. What was the name of that game? Where Mario climbs up the ladder.
Yes.
It's not Donkey Kong, is it?
Donkey Kong. That's Donkey Kong.
Oh, well, shit.
Oh yeah. Donkey Kong, believe, was 1987.
Yeah, so the game started to evolve really quickly. And that's something I've always really been amazed at, just how quickly resources got dedicated to this industry that just kind of sprang up within a decade.
Yeah.
Now, I'm going to spend a lot of time today. I think we're going to spend a lot of time today on how these video games evolved from that early stage. Because video games kind of had 3 stages. There was the early, like the nascent stage where it was pretty much being born. Then there was the stage where the styles started to diverge a little bit. There was a little bit more variance in the games that was being played.
Definitely. It's definitely evolved as soon as the West got more involved as well, I would say.
Yeah, absolutely. And we started transitioning from like top downs to, side scrollers and things like, Mario Brothers and things like that, which we'll talk about a little bit later. But then there's also the modern age of gaming, which most people really consider from about 2001 to now. So yeah, we'll kind of split things up a little bit as we go, and I think it's going to be a really good discussion. Now, one of the things that I really want to get started with is early video game violence. Because almost as soon as video games started coming out, they started getting violent.
Yes, I would say so.
It was amazing because it went from things like, throwing a barrel down some stairs to freaking Duke Nukem and Doom. I mean...
Yes, Contra, another arcade classic.
Exactly. It just got, like, shooters became instantly popular and, like, they got violent quickly.
Yes.
And that's something that's kind of carried on as a theme just overall in video games. Violence in video games has also been hotly debated and hotly... what's the word I'm looking for? Counteracted? No.
Contentious?
Yes, that one. With people actually putting studies into saying whether or not video games desensitize people and make them more violent and more prone to violent acts and like dissociative and everything like that.
Mm-hmm. I have got onions about that one too. Strong onions.
Hey, go for it.
Yeah. I honestly think that a lot of people like to blame interactive media like video games for the increase of violence in, younger people. And obviously there can be some correlation to, you're seeing your favorite character do a thing in a game and you want to be like your favorite character. But also, for me personally, I played violent games when I was younger. I played things like GoldenEye. I played things like, for the N64, things like that, Metal Gear. Man, I can't even remember when it was originally came out, Metal Gear. But to me, I think the first iteration of violence that a young person could see is the news. Just straight up real life. Especially depending on where you grow up. I mean, you're going to see violence in real life before you see it in something that you're doing. And it also, it's my personal opinion that, parenting has a huge hand in this as well.
Absolutely.
So my big hot onion take is that it's not the games, y'all.
Yeah, and that's completely fair because, like, especially considering that there's other factors which I believe are way more indicative of violence than video games. Like, for example, there's a lot of violence in impoverished communities which most of the people in those communities can't really even afford the video games at the points that they were starting to form these opinions of video game violence. Like, I didn't get my first video game system until 98, 99. And
ooh, was that the N64?
No, it was the Sega.
Ooh, that's a good one.
Yeah, I enjoyed the Sega. But I mean, it's one of those things where, like, people were violent before me, right? People were violent before any of the current generations. And I'd even argue that people in the previous generations were more violent. But there's also a recent study that's come out that connects violence trends to lead content in the soil, believe it or not. Going a little bit off subject, it turns out that as lead content in the soil went up, so did violent behavior and more impulsive behavior, behavioral issues, things like bipolar disorder and the like spiked due to lead content in the soil because they put lead in fuel, they put lead in in so many different things that during the 1950s and 60s, all the way through the 1980s, lead content in the soil like quadrupled from what it was 100 years before, which they think affected brain chemistry.
That makes sense.
So yeah, I'd argue that has more of an influence than video games as far as violence goes.
Yeah, I mean, honestly, you can tie it back to anything really. And sure, there might be some edge cases where a video game, made Timmy hit Bobby with a stick or something like that, right? But at the end of the day, there are so many other factors that contribute to violence that video games, to me, are often the scapegoat.
Yeah, I mean, that's completely... Oh, I got a new person. Oh, hey! Hey, Lustful, how you been? It's been a while. Just hopped in because I was bored and saw Cap was streaming. Yeah, it's the first time you've been here. But yeah, I completely agree. And one of the things that's really fascinating about that is, even though that connection's been made, that like there's a whole bunch of other factors in video game violence and everything like that. Did you know it's actually still used by the military?
Which part?
Video
game? Yeah.
Yeah, like for recruitment.
Yeah, that makes sense to me.
Yeah. So the United States military actually puts millions of dollars every year into video game development. Things like Call of Duty, Army of One. There's several others, several other franchises that get actually a lot of their funding come from the United States government, because they found that video games boost enrollment in military branches.
That makes sense, especially Call of Duty, Battlefield, etc.
Exactly, and it's kind of they learned from things like what was the movie, Apocalypse Now, and Top Gun. When the originals came out, after those came out, they saw a boost in recruitment that was almost exponential. So they learned how to use media really quick. Like from the 70s on, the United States military has been putting millions of dollars into video games and movies in order to boost patriotism and boost recruitment. So whether it's violent or not, the United States military is using it.
Yeah, and you know what? I will say this. I think that even if video games had maybe a early instance of violence, for younger folk, there are still quite a few video games where the intent of the violence is, I guess, subjectively for good, right? Like in a fantastical sense, you often have, at least in the very beginning, heroes to slay the evil. And I guess you could say that ties into you could say that is tying into recruitment as well, because I'm sure plenty of recruitment pamphlets have that same sort of rhetoric, slay the evil,
absolutely,
protect the country, etc., etc. So
absolutely, and it boosts that patriotic sense of duty and everything. And like with Call of Duty, people want to play with those guns that they see in the video games, right? So yeah, they use it pretty effectively. Also, it was just pointed out in chat what you're drawing, and I hadn't really noticed what it was quite yet. That's amazing. I could not love that more.
Legend of Zelda. Legend of Zelda is one of my favorite franchises of all time, and Majora's Mask is actually my most favorite game of all time. So I thought I would make a little tribute.
So Zelda was one of the earlier ones, right?
Yes. Zelda in its original form was on the NES, and it was inspired by Miyamoto going out to his garden as a child and exploring the garden, and playing pretend, finding cool caves that he could, explore, or imaginary monsters that he could fight with a stick. That is the origin of Zelda. And that sort of purity in a lot of gaming mediums is why I keep coming back personally.
Yeah, and that's
The
one of
story.
the franchises that stuck around pretty not it's pretty loyal to the original concept is what I'm trying to say. Like it
Mm-hmm.
hasn't shifted too much from its origins, from its source like messages, right? It's about adventure. It's pretty wholesome, right? Um, Whereas some other franchises, like they get more violent, they get more sexual, they get more whatever, right?
Right.
Um,
Actually, could I just point out something? Mike in my chat, Mike Webb, he mentions an interesting thing that I have not heard of yet, and I need to look this up now. He says they got in trouble for that too, in regards to recruitment, using an esports team to pull in recruits from their chat on Twitch.
yes,
I
yes,
didn't
they
hear
did.
about that.
Um, the United States military has gotten really creative and they adapted very quickly, especially to like now once esports came out, the military they got in on that quick, especially during things like Call of Duty tournaments and you'd see like the first televised ones. You'd see like they'd go to commercial and one of the first things that would come up is something from the military.
Wow. That makes sense actually.
It wasn't just that, but like yeah, it was really common. They got in on it quick, and they did get in trouble because they violated was it FCC laws? It was some sort of communications laws or something along those lines, where like the military couldn't get involved because it's technically a government agency putting themselves onto a civilian agency,
Mm.
right? So yeah, I think that's what they got in trouble for,
Wow.
and
I did
yeah,
not hear about them doing this. I knew about, like, having ads or whatever in like streams, or just having the pamphlets in the Amaray cases for these games. But I didn't know that they were literally just pulling people from a Twitch chat. That's wild.
yeah. I mean, they got to get creative because actually, right now, military enlistment has been kind of down, um, especially down from the peak of like 2001, right from September 11th. That kind of spurred about 10 years of unprecedented recruitment. They could turn
Hmm.
people away as much as they wanted to at that point. So with that
Nuts.
lull, they've had to adapt.
Absolutely nuts. Thank you for sharing that tidbit, Mike.
Yeah. And I welcome that all the time. Like if somebody's got information, like I don't know absolutely everything. So yeah, any little bit of information, any little additions, deeply appreciated. So you were saying about Zelda as it has it kind of evolved.
Yes. Yeah. I really enjoy how, as a series, it has stayed fairly true to its original source. It's almost always been, Link, uh, or Link and his pals, going to slay the evil, which is almost always Ganon, and from the original Zelda all the way up until Breath of the Wild, and now I assume Breath of the Wild 2. It has always been, good versus evil
Yep.
in a very traditional fantasy sense where there's no guns per se. There's no like modern weaponry. God forbid there ever be a modernization of Legend of Zelda. I would
Oh yeah, I'd cry.
probably yards. Um, but God, I think that something about games in its purest sense, um, you know, staying true to that type of form makes it feel like art to me, storytelling,
Yep.
and those are the types of games that I enjoy. That's my bias. I don't typically like to play a lot of games that are, hyper violent, and then there are some exceptions. um, but I think it's really interesting to see how you have this dichotomy of, you have Legend of Zelda Breath of the Wild 2 coming out in the same year as like Battlefield 500 or something. And
Right.
they're so vastly different, and you have to really consider where each franchise is coming from too. I think politically as well as socially, very different beginnings for both.
Yeah, absolutely. So Lolo in chat was saying that she feels that recruitment enlistment is going to go up with the state of the world and economy because it offers so much security, which many people are lacking right now. And that's partially true, but in the United States right now, there's an issue where, not an issue, there's a sense of a lack of trust, and there's not as many people who are wanting to sign up for the military because there's not as many people who are fully patriotic, and they don't have that
I'll raise my
sense.
hand to that.
They what?
I'll raise my hands to that. I'm not
Yeah.
fully patriotic either.
Yeah, the sense of patriotism, like especially blind patriotism, has fallen so much for various reasons. I'm not going to sit here and say one thing or the other is correct, but like for various reasons, people have lost that sense of patriotism that has led to decades of abnormally strong recruitment. Whereas now people are not much less likely. Like the numbers are falling,
Mm.
and unless there is some sort of like attack or major war act of war, I don't see that climbing anytime soon, especially as the economy struggles.
Yeah, for sure. Um, yeah, I mean, yeah, I would definitely agree with that. I understand, sometimes people got to do what they got to do. That's just kind of the
Yep.
state of the world right now.
Yep. And again, we're going off topic, but one of the things with military recruitment, it's always been targeted towards those who are less financially stable. It's always been
Yes.
targeted towards minorities and low-income communities. You go to a career fair for a really wealthy high school, and you're not going to see a million recruiters there. You're going to see tech companies and everything. So you go into a job fair at a lower income high school, and you're going to see every single branch represented a couple of times. This money has a lot to do with it. Now,
Absolutely.
speaking of money, the gaming industry is insane. Back in the 1970s when it started out, like there was obviously, because it was just starting, the gaming industry was very minuscule, even in terms of just the distribution. Because even as games started getting put out, the profit margins were really low because technology was expensive, and there wasn't as much competition or variety. That like people would buy one game, they'd buy Pac-Man for example, and they just sit on it for 10, 15 years, right?
Yeah, absolutely. I
And those
think
old arcade games, they last forever.
yes, yeah. 'Cause, I mean, you gotta make it last. A dime only comes once in a while, so you gotta make that dime last, or whatever
Exactly.
the currency for adjusted for inflation would be. I think if I remember correctly, the adjusted for inflation price of a video game on the SNES, the Super Nintendo, it would be roughly $80 today,
Yep.
which
Yeah.
it, actually, if I can spiel off a little bit here, the PlayStation 5 right now, you can typically find a PlayStation 5 game costing $70. So we're getting there again.
Yeah, and speaking of, like, I know myself, I've got a PS4, and I still got that thing. I love that thing, and it served me very well.
It's a good console.
However, looking at the cost of PS5, how often we got to update, all that other stuff, I'm probably gonna be making the switch to PC.
That's fair. 100%.
Yeah, it's gotten really expensive, and it's like prices that we haven't really seen since like the beginning.
Yeah.
Like the PS3 and PS4, they were a couple $100, right?
Yes.
So like that's
Adjusted for inflation, you could probably say around $200-ish.
yeah. Like I remember getting my PS4 for like $200 even. And that was 5 years ago. So I mean that's not even that long ago as far as technology. Well, not technology, but as far as history goes.
Right. Yeah.
So yeah, like the price of video games it's amazingly stable, which is really weird considering how much more advanced things are now.
Do you want to know the reason for that, actually?
Yeah, hit me.
The reason why video games in general, for I want to say maybe 10 plus years, has been so stable is because of precedent. It's very, very difficult for things to change, which is very surprising considering this is a technological industry. But, consumers, gamers like you and I, we expect a game to be $60. And if a game is higher than $60, we really heavily consider whether we actually want to buy it.
Yep.
If a game is lower than $60, like let's say it's for the Switch or whatever, and I won't say it's a AAA title game, but maybe it's a a fairly simple game that you could buy on the Switch, maybe an indie title, and you see that's for $40, wow, you're gonna snap that up right away. And pricing structure has stayed stable like that because consumer precedent.
Yeah, and Rosie over here saying that when she worked at GameStop, it was like $50 for a game.
Yep.
And yeah, I mean it's pretty consistent. Like it will go up with inflation. The prices will go up with inflation. But it's pretty stable. It's been like adjusted for inflation. It's been for a video game between $40 and $80 for the entirety of the gaming industry's existence, which is again amazing. So that actually brings me to another subject that I know is incredibly controversial today. But pricing structures, while they haven't really shifted too much as far as buying the actual game goes, there's also the emergence of things called freemium games and microtransactions.
Oh no, you've activated my trap card.
Yeah. So I understand why companies do it because they got to make money, they got a bottom line at the end of the day. However, when the first one started doing it, it was you get the game for free kind of thing, and then you can add, that's where the freemium thing came in. But you get the game for free, and then you'd be able to buy expansion packs and stuff like that. And I wasn't so mad about that, especially when I get a good expansion, like from Assassin's Creed, for example, right? Where the game was fairly cheap itself. Back in the mid 2000s, the game itself wasn't that expensive, and then like the expansion pack was like $20, right? So I was okay with that. But then you get organizations which are getting a little bit more greedy, like EA, Electronic Arts.
Yeah, you could just say EA up front. That's fine.
Yeah. Yeah, I didn't want to call them out, but I'm going to call them out.
You should.
Then you get organizations like EA, which they will nickel and dime you to death. And what's amazing is that they've actually gotten away with it for the most part. But
yes,
it's even more amazing to think about it. Yeah, it points at Sims. Yeah, The Sims is. You've paid over $1,000 for all. Wow. And I mean that's the case for a lot of these games where like the game will be free or it'll be 20, $40, but then you end up paying. You end up paying for each expansion. You pay for this little plugin here, the little weapon there, whatever, and like it ends up being way more expensive than if they had just priced it as a whole game, right? She gets the all the packs at full price because she gets it at launch, which that's perfectly reasonable because if you want to get that access right away, you're going to pay for it, especially if it's a game you love.
Yeah. And
so I'm guessing you have feelings on this.
I have very strong onions about this. Listen, the game industry right now, the culture of it is so much that is, if you are an observant person, if you are an observant gamer, you will realize that there is almost no reason to buy a game at launch. No reason. Because they will either price protect it down during holiday and you can get it on sale. The same game, same stuff right at launch. But you know what? If you get it at launch, you're going to have to deal with patch updates. You're going to have to deal with bugs. You're going to have to deal with incomplete content. Whereas if you just wait a couple months, you're going to get it on sale and you're going to get the game patched. You're going to get the game, maybe it already has a season pass out. You're going to get it with all that. If you wait a whole year, you're probably going to get a Game of the Year edition. There's no point to buying a game at launch anymore. And that is the current iteration of the industry right now.
Yeah. We could actually use a case study for this one. The launch of Cyberpunk. That was disastrous, right?
I'm legitimately very angry about that one, because I am a person who suffers from epileptic seizures. I have very high photosensitivity sensitivity, but when that game came out, I am someone where if it even flashes just a little bit, I'm in danger. And there is no warning for when it happens in the game. It will just happen. And that type of insensitivity to, certain disabilities was so grievous that I'm glad that I did not purchase the game. I'm glad that I did not spend any money for it, because the fact that it has been, so many years, and the game only just finally had its full overhaul patch, literally almost rebuilding the game patch.
Yep.
I want to say in May. I don't remember when it happened.
Oh yeah, that was very recently.
Yeah, but that game really upsets me because you have this, I would say, industry darling company, which is the same company that made The Witcher, and everybody's like, oh man, they made The Witcher, they can't do anything wrong. They got this. This is going to be a fantastic game. It's going to be so cool. The concept was so, enticing. It felt different. And then the game comes out, and there are so many terribly grievous bugs and, frankly, very insensitive, transphobic, xenophobic materials in the game.
Nope.
It's just so upsetting. And they charged $60 for that game. $60 for a game that was not complete in any form.
Yeah, and that's one of the things that got me, because I'll admit, I paid for the game. I bought it when it first came out. It was so hyped up. Everybody was saying it's gonna be it was like the second coming of Jesus in video game form, right?
It really was.
It was
Keanu
so
Reeves
hyped up. I mean, and it had Keanu Reeves in it, and it was supposed to be this incredible mind-blowing game. And I mean, I had fun with it. I enjoyed it for what it was. But like, the bugs were hilarious to me.
Oh
I had
yeah,
a good
some of the bugs are honestly very funny.
Yeah, I had a good time playing with bugs. But that's me. I'm kind of the just fuck around and find out kind of guy when it comes to video games.
Sure.
I don't take them that seriously. But for somebody who takes video games seriously, for somebody who example, like they put the last little bit of their money that they'd been saving up for a video game, like if they did that, I would have been pissed if I was in that situation.
Yeah.
And
like,
then
I can't imagine. This is probably something that not a lot of people think about, but as a person with a disability, I think about this. I can't imagine a mother going to get Cyberpunk for her, son or whatever, offspring, and she takes it home, doesn't know anything about how buggy it is, how unfinished it is, and the son has an epileptic seizure. Just right there. Because it's so severe. And there's no warning for it. And it can happen at any time. It's just, it's really, it's one of those things that I feel very strongly about.
And something that was amazing to me is like, we've had some time to begin to understand how photosensitivity works and how epilepsy works with it and everything.
Yeah.
And it's not like this was the first time this happened. Like,
No.
if you look back in the history of it, like, Pokemon had the same issue.
Yup.
Right? So, like, I don't understand how they didn't learn from it. It's one of those sayings, like, if you don't learn from history, you're going to repeat it, right?
Yeah. Yeah, like, that's the thing that peeves me. It steams my broccoli, bro. It's just like, it happened before.
Steams my
learn?
broccoli.
Yeah,
Damn,
steams my
I love
broccoli.
that. But yeah, like, it really, it's so frustrating because lessons that could have been easily learned and problems that could have been easily avoidable, like, they just move forward. Now, I know with this company, the pressure was just so immense, externally and financially, that they had to put the game out, or else they were going to go under and it was never going to get finished. So I understand that part of it, but the way it was pushed and the way it was forced to come out was just so immoral.
Yes, 100%. It's not the fault of, I want to be clear when I say this, it's not the fault of the devs. It is almost always the fault of stockholders, management, and capitalism. That's just how it is.
Yep, absolutely. Now, if you look at other franchises like Madden, for example, they're forced to put out a game every single year. So now people are so mad, and it's like they're complaining because the game hasn't really changed in like 5 years, right?
Yes.
Probably even longer than that. The game hasn't really changed very much. And in some cases,
I have a funny anecdote about that too, but go on.
Yeah, in some cases it's gone backwards. Like customization and like in-depth stuff that was in previous iterations of the game aren't there anymore, and it's actually been simplified. So like, it's really amazing how companies are just pumping out games for the profit, where it seems to kind of be losing the art in some cases, in a lot of different franchises. Like we were talking about Zelda earlier. Zelda is Zelda, right? The quality's been consistent or gone up. The quality of the games has been there since day one. Franchises like Madden or like Star Wars, for example.
Oh man.
It's not keeping up the same. It doesn't have that same type of standard.
No. And let's be clear too. Nintendo is definitely not free from sin. You know, they've definitely done actually several things now that is really scummy, if I can just say that. But you know, comparatively speaking, a lot of people have done a lot worse.
Yeah, absolutely. Now, I want to go way back on this one, and this is going to open entirely. Well, actually, what? Let's go back to this Madden thing. You had something to say about that.
Oh, yeah. Well, so okay, not about Madden in particular, but MLB The Show.
Yeah,
MLB The Show, I believe it was MLB The Show either 20, 21, or 22. They are very similar now, so it almost doesn't even matter anymore. But MLB The Show was almost identical to the show that came out the year before that IGN, bless their heart, you can say whatever you want about IGN, but they just reposted the same review from the year before. They just changed the number of the title and they gave
yep.
it the same 2 out of 5. I think actually they gave it a 1 out of 5 if I remember correctly. That's just how it is now with MLB The Show, with any 2K game that's like a NBA or any Madden really, you're gonna get the same. It's the rehash.
Yeah, and it's to the point of absurdity.
Yes.
Like I can understand. Let's say that they released the game, then they do a yearly roster update kind of thing. And if you want the new roster, you pay $1 or whatever, right?
Yeah.
I'd understand that. I'd get that. That's perfectly understandable. But calling it a brand new game when it's not, it's just so it's scummy as hell.
I'm looking directly at Overwatch.
Yep. Um. Well, now that you brought up Overwatch, there's another thing that I want to bring up, and that's companies and like brand loyalty.
Mm-hmm.
So we all know the PC versus Xbox versus PlayStation feud thing that goes on, right?
Yeah, console wars.
Yeah, the console wars. That's something that everybody really knows about. However, the companies that make the video games, the companies behind them, in a lot of cases, they're either disproportionately less powerful in the console or disproportionately more. Um, like one game I want to bring up in particular is Destiny.
Mm-hmm.
The,
Destiny, Bungie, and all its subsidiaries.
exactly. Now I got a new person. Hey, what's up, Boney? How's it going? And yes, Rosie, I love tacos. I want tacos so bad now.
Oh, me too, me too.
Yeah,
No
God, I want
cheese,
some
please.
tacos. And what?
I can't have cheese.
Oh, yeah. I love cheese. Give me a whole loaf of milk.
Oh, it's so cursed. I know what you mean, but it's cursed.
But yeah, like I was saying about Destiny. The original Destiny was a hell of a game. Like it was just spectacular. It was visually stunning, and the plot was unique, and like it was an amazing, amazing game. Destiny 2, however, is a completely different animal. Not because the game itself was that different, because the game pretty much was the same for all intents and purposes.
Mm.
The writing and the updates and the patches, and they had a very cyberpunk type issue with corporate pushing the game to come out too early,
Yep.
and different company-wide issues which forced the game to come out in a way that wasn't what it was intended. Now, from when it comes to Destiny, that stems from the ownership of the company. I think wasn't. Let me think about this one. Wasn't Destiny original or not originally? It was bought out by like Blizzard or Activision.
Yes, yes. Bungie was acquired. I believe they were acquired by Activision Blizzard. And that's when I believe, oh shoot, what was the game that came out that was like Destiny but not Destiny, and it flopped so bad? I can't remember now.
I don't have it off the top of my head.
It flopped, so it was like so similar, but it flopped so bad. Now I'm gonna look it up because it's gonna bother me.
Yeah, I'll race you. See who gets it first.
Oh my god, you're probably gonna get there because I can't. I have no brain. I don't have brain. What was it called? I'm just gonna look up Bungie. No, wait, I don't think Bungie put it out. Pretty sure it was Activision Blizzard that put it out. Yeah, you scooped my brain, Cassie. I can't. Well, anyway, there was a game that came out that was so like Destiny, but had zero heart. Absolutely zero heart, broken to hell, repetitive, and the reason why it only sold anything was because people were so loyal to the Destiny brand.
Yep.
That they were like, to the Bungie brand, that they were like, well, they can't do any wrong. How are they going to do us wrong? They're going to put out a good game. I'm going to buy it because I love them. And then look what they did.
Well, I mean, if you're looking at brand loyalty, for example, in your opinion, why would people be loyal to Bungie?
Because they are in love with Halo, and the first nostalgic reasons that they played Halo on LAN parties in their mom's garage with all of their friends. And honestly, nostalgia does wonders for brand loyalty.
It really does, and that's why Nintendo is so good, because they have those characters that carry over from system to system that have been there from the very beginning.
Yes.
And that's something that Sony never really learned. They didn't really take that model with them. Whereas like Microsoft with the Xbox, they have those mainstay games that, like Halo, for example, that create that loyalty to the brand that it's actually, at this point, it's generational. Looking at another brand loyalty thing, if you look at which one? Blizzard, with World of Warcraft. The original World of Warcraft, like, that was a phenomenon, right? It wasn't just a new game. It was an MMO. It was one of the first, if not the first, massive game of its kind.
Yes.
Like, World of Warcraft just completely took over. And a lot of the games that we know today owe their beginnings to games like World of Warcraft.
Yes, I would agree with that.
So, like, that creates that brand loyalty that, you stick with a system just because it has that one company that works with them.
Yeah. Yeah, 100%.
So I want to go back to the very beginning of our discussion with violence. So, yeah, we talked about Duke Nukem and Contra and Doom. We didn't talk so much the fighting games.
Oh, okay, yes.
Yeah, so the fighting games really changed the game, because whereas before you had the side scrollers like Mario Brothers, where you just go, point A to point B. These side scrollers, they had the same kind of left-right dynamic, at least originally, and even to a point today. They had that same left-right dynamic, but you have things like Street Fighter that came out, and Tekken and Mortal Kombat, which they upped the brutality, they upped the violence, they upped the action. The speed of gaming really picked up from the original.
Yes.
So do you find yourself leaning more towards the slower paced games, or like, do you have any strong opinions one way or the other as far as pacing goes in video games, as far as how they developed?
Do you mean the development cycle, or just the pace of the game in general?
The pace of the game.
Okay. I can enjoy a good fast-paced game. I enjoy Street Fighter. Well, okay. What Street Fighter is doing currently kind of stinks. That goes back into microtransactions and live service games. But Street Fighter conceptually and in the original iteration was very fun. I remember very vividly the days where I would go to my friend's house and we would play the shit out of Tekken 2, Tekken Tag Tournament. Just all about it. BlazBlue or Blaze Blue? I never learned how to pronounce it. Man, I just like there's something about those games in particular that are very fun. And I would say growing up in the community where fighting games were at its prime, there's so many fighting games and a lot of people were like super into them. Yeah, I would say some kids did pretend to be fighting game protagonists.
Yup.
We did pretend to fight each other a little bit, but no one actually got hurt. And I think it was all in good fun. It wasn't like, people like going out and being like, I'm gonna kick your ass just for the fun of it. You know what I mean? And I think that a fighting game doesn't really contribute to violence, which is a funny kind of association because fighting is violence, right? But
Yep.
in the way that it is developed, in the way that it is presented in game form, it has always really been more competitive than anything else, in my opinion.
Yeah, and something somebody in my chat, Boney, he brought up that the fighting game community could be really, really toxic. That hyper
Sure.
competitiveness comes out. It
Ugh.
That's an entirely other different can of worms that I want to dive into a little bit, because it's not just the fighting game community which can get toxic. It's esports in general can get toxic. Like I'm talking like
Sure.
again Madden, the fighting games, shooters, all those other ones. Just like was like before it before esports became mainstream, you had like Magic the Gathering, right? Those little groups, they get so niche and get so clicky that they can get toxic really quick, and there's a lot of gatekeeping that happens, and it's not great, and it ruins the fun for a lot of people. But another toxic thing that I really wanted to discuss takes us back to Tekken. And this one also takes us back to like pretty much a lot of games, honestly, into the fantasy world. It takes us into Duke Nukem again, right? And one of the main things that I really want to talk about right now is hypersexuality in video games.
That's a big one.
As soon as jiggle physics became a thing, they became an excessive thing. Right?
Oh my god, I'm sweating.
Like, you gotta admit, like they went ham on those jiggle physics, especially like in Tekken, right?
They sure did.
Like they went crazy on those things. But in general, as far as video games go, hypersexualization is an issue. There are some recent games. The what?
I'm sorry. Real quick, I just wanted to shout out really quick. I got a huge raid from Spooky Sprinkle. I just wanted to say something. Hi, guys. Thanks for joining the stream. We're having a podcast stream today with Captain Snafu _ PhD, aka Snack, aka Snarf, aka Cap.
Stack.
And I hope that you enjoy video game discussion today. We're talking about stuff. We're talking about stuff and things that can get political, but it's all good fun. And also my credentials are that I work in the game industry, and that's why I can talk about this stuff with some professionalism. Anyway, go on. Sorry. You were talking about jiggle physics. Which
Yeah,
is
we're
a
talking about
fun
jiggle
thing
physics,
to come in on.
And I mean, for a lot of people, jizzle. Oh my God,
Woo, buddy. Woo,
jiggle
buddy.
physics.
You want to walk that back?
Jizzle physics.
Somebody quote that in the chat. Hold on, I'm adding a quote right now. I'm adding it. Hold on. I'm adding it right now. Okay.
Well, damn.
This is getting immortalized, FYI.
Whew.
Anyway, you were saying about jizzle physics?
Oh, like for a lot of people, there's no such thing as too much jiggle physics. But, damn, I lost my entire train of thought. Oh,
Your quote 20, by the way.
and quote number 20. Okay, that's fair. That's fair. Damn, I walked into that one. That was bad.
Cassie,
Oh,
I hope
man.
that you're quoting that in cap stream because it needs to be there too. Really.
Yeah, I don't know if I know how to do that.
You just exclamation mark quote add jizzle physics.
Guess find out in a second, huh?
Walt in my chat says I only like a moderate amount of jizzle physics.
Wow, that is now quote number 1. What was that? What was it that the person said?
He said I only like a moderate amount of jizzle physics.
Jizzle physics, damn it. Whew. Damn. Well, that's gonna be a thing now.
Anyway, you were saying, if you remember.
Oh yeah, I was gonna be talking about like hypersexualization. Now,
Yes.
like it's become almost a not almost a stereotype. It's become a stereotype where like the more skimpy an outfit is, the higher the armor rating. Like it's really ridiculous just how sexual a lot of these games are needlessly. First off,
Yes.
like there's a lot of these games that like it gets very sexual and it doesn't add anything to the plot. It doesn't add anything to the character. Like it's just eye candy. Now that kind of leads into the perception that of the sweaty gamer boy, right? The gamer guy who's never even seen a woman, kind of thing.
You can say incel.
Yeah.
You can say incel if you want.
I'm trying to be nice. But yeah, I mean that's exactly what I'm talking about.
I'm very honest.
That's exactly what I'm talking about. And that's the stereotype that gets given. But like I'm sure you have opinions as far as the art styles go, because whether we like it or not, this hypersexualization has led to a lot of detail that otherwise was not covered before.
Yes.
They put a lot of work into these boobs. They put a lot of work into these women, right? They put a lot of work into the butts. And like it's always amazed me. Just like it's funny because I remember one game. I don't remember what the game was, but like the background was blurry and kind of pixelized or pixelated, and the woman was like in like full rendered 3D. Like it was amazing.
Of course.
So like I'm sure you have opinions as far as like the art styles, how they developed, as far as like clothing, especially like for a lot of women's clothing in the video games, it's never practical, first off, but it's also the styles have shifted, and they've actually even affected the cultures that are around them, like the people in the IRL.
Yeah, I mean, like, I would say, we are very steadily getting better, very, very slowly. But in the beginning, it was very much impractical and eye candy for the specific reason that devs were all men. All the devs were all men. And that was what they wanted to make. They didn't care that it was problematic, because for them, it was not. And the people who were playing those games were primarily, they were making it for men. And that's why you can get into these situations where you will have, Quiet from MGS5, who apparently for lore reasons has to be naked because she has photosynthesis or something. She breathes through her skin. And You know, if it has gotten to a point where it is a little bit like, if you want to be horny, just say you're making it just to be horny.
Yes.
Just
Yes,
say it.
absolutely. And like it really is amazing because the first female protagonist in a video game was back in the 80s, early 80s, like 81, 82. And it was a character by the name of Billy Sue, which was on the Atari system. It was like Rabbit or Wabbit or something along those lines. Like the game was like, it was pretty garbage, but female protagonists aren't exactly a new thing. It's way more common now.
Yes.
But it's not unheard of, right?
Right.
Just look at, for example, Lara Croft.
Yeah. Who was also very sexualized too, but in a different way.
Exactly. Now, that being said, some of the newer female protagonists that have come out are really cool.
Yes.
Like, for example,
Well, okay. Let me
Go for
walk
it.
that back really quick and say, all the female protagonists that I have ever seen in games have always been cool to me, regardless of whether they've been sexualized or not. It's just an unfortunate circumstance that they were sexualized as much as they were. But anyway, go back to what you were saying.
that's completely true. Now, one of the things that I've appreciated, especially of the Assassin's Creed franchise, as of late, is the inclusion of female protagonists. Like how Odyssey and Valhalla used like female protagonists, and they weren't like, yeah, they were sexual and everything, but like it wasn't one of the main components of their character. So I did appreciate that. I've appreciated that. How it's like, for example, they use normal armors, right? They're not running around in bikini.
Sure.
So
I will say that that does come after some backlash. You know, they did not do it out of the goodness of their heart.
right.
Yeah, because in Assassin's Creed, oh gosh, I can't remember. It was the 4-person Assassin's Creed where you could have 4 people.
Unity.
Yes, Assassin's Creed Unity. They had made the argument, written in publication, that it was too hard to code a woman instead of a male model.
Wow.
They said that. They said that for Unity, and then they also walked back a lot of, options for having female protagonists. There's one game in particular that came out on the PS Vita, Assassin's Creed Revengeance or something like that, and that game actually had a female protagonist, but no one talks about it. One, because
Nope.
it was on the Vita. 2, because they don't want to advertise that.
Yeah, and I mean, like, you think, one thing that was really cool, that, like, again, I don't know about their motivation behind it or anything like that, but one thing that, like, I fanboyed when, this is probably a spoiler for people who are playing Valhalla, but the main character from Odyssey shows up in Valhalla, and she's actually a part of the expansion pack story, which is just amazing to me. And the thing that I really appreciated about that was they didn't go with the male version of that character. They went with the female version of that character, which shows her as being the canon character, which I think's pretty cool.
That is cool.
So yeah, like, it wasn't Alexios, it was I forgot her name. It's been forever. Anyways, but you get the point.
Yeah.
So yeah, like, but still, at the end of the day, hypersexualization of females in video games is even today still an issue.
It's
And
also prevalent in the work culture too, I will have to add.
I was gonna
Just
say
as-
exactly that.
Yeah.
It kind of reflects on the greater society where Hollywood, TV, pretty much every other medium where women again are hypersexualized to a point where it's just it boggles my mind, because we've made progress in other aspects of it, but this seems to be something that is really hung up on, and I wish that wasn't the case.
Right. And one of the biggest reasons for that is because, as I mentioned before, it is very difficult for the video games industry to change. They have cornered their niche market as primarily cis straight white men, and they create and cater their content to appeal to those people. And it just so happens that hypersexualization is one of those things. It wasn't until very recently, actually, that Rockstar Games, who is most famous for Grand Theft Auto, they had started making huge overhauls to their actual corporate structure and their company environment, because it was very much frat boy, very much type of there were female employees at Rockstar that were harassed in an extremely not okay way. And you have even more cases of that in Activision Blizzard and Ubisoft. God, I can't even tell you how many cases there were for Ubisoft. And that it's why I am so cautious to say, oh, they're making a lot of progress in games, right? Because they might be making progress in games, but that isn't necessarily I guess out of like integrity, out of the goodness of the game development. It is because they were under fire or are currently under fire for those same issues. They have that work structure, and this is something that a lot of people don't know. But every single day there can be cases where there's harassment in the office, in the industry, and nobody knows that these games are funding the management that makes that okay.
Yeah, absolutely. Give me just 1 second. I'll be right back. Go ahead and go off a little bit more on that, please.
Just go off. Just go the fuck off, he said. Okay. Well, now that I have my soapbox, hi everybody. Anybody who stayed for the raid, thanks so much for staying, and I hope you are enjoying the conversation. It's a bit deep, I know, it's a little serious, but it is something that I feel very, very passionate about. Just working in the game industry, I myself, I am not cis, and it affects me greatly to see a lot of these things happening in the industry which I work. And a lot of people don't actually realize what's going on behind the scenes, and it's worth to know. And I will also say, wink, nudge, it's my personal opinion that if you don't agree with a certain game company's management, that it is 100% okay to acquire the game and not purchase it. Wink. And that's where I stand with that.
And I will say I agree with the last part that I heard.
I'm glad.
So yeah, you brought up another game that I do want to discuss a little bit, especially in terms of hypersexualization and violence. Mm-hmm. And that is GTA, good old GTA.
Mm-hmm, mm-hmm.
Which, side note, that's actually my title at work, which is I have always found kind of hilarious.
Wait, what do you mean?
That's my job position. I'm a GTA.
Oh! I thought they were like calling you that as a nickname. I was like, no. What do you mean?
No. Now that would be racist as fuck. You kidding me?
Yeah, I was also gonna be like, that feels not good.
Yeah, we need to have a talk.
Yeah, we kind of need to step in on that one. But no, it's GTA graduate teaching assistant.
Okay, no worries.
Yeah.
Got it.
But yeah, I always laugh about that because GTA is one of my favorite games originally.
They're making in the new one that they're making, they're actually making a female pro tag.
I hope so, and I hope it comes out really good.
Yeah, me
because
too.
they got some stuff to make up for.
They sure do.
But yeah, I wanted to bring it up because, again, looking back on violence and hypersexualization and everything, I remember the backlash, or I read about the backlash too, about when GTA first came out, the original GTA, how you could kill a hooker. And people were like, oh my lord, that is the worst thing. It's going to unravel the fabric of America.
Mm-hmm.
But GTA, again, for lack of a better term, changed the game. And it kind of created this whole genre of violent driver / action type games.
Sure.
Which is really cool. But what I really want to touch on is online gaming because of things like GTA. GTA Online is one of the absolute most successful online games of all time. I mean, that's hands down. It's been around for 10 years now, and people are still playing it. So yeah, it's one of the absolute most successful games of all time. However, that does not come without its issues. One of the big issues that I've noticed is children who should not be playing that game. Playing that game online with adults, right?
Yeah.
So I want to talk a little bit about marketing.
Sure.
The way video games have been marketed has shifted over the years.
Mm-hmm.
Now,
Definitely.
originally you'd find a little flyer, a little ad here and there in a magazine or whatever, right? Now
Shout
it's
out
almost
to
like
Nintendo power.
Yeah, exactly. So now it's almost like a movie release whenever a video game comes out.
Yeah.
The amount of work that goes into a lot of these releases is just spectacular. Could you talk to me about maybe you have a favorite marketing campaign that you've seen that was just really cool to you, or artwork from a specific game that was just really cool to you?
Yeah, I can speak to that, but really quick, a Walt in my chat says, I think that falls more on parental supervision, i.e. that there basically isn't any, and I 100% agree with that. It's all parental. That's all that is.
Absolutely.
I just wanted to shout that out before I moved on. But yeah, it's so nuts to me because as I mentioned before, I work in the games industry, and so I do have a good visual on the types of marketing that happens for a lot of these games, and it's still, even working for as long as I have, it still boggles me how much money we put into ad revenue, how much money that we put into marketing, just so that our game can sell, maybe 500,000 units. And 500,000 units, if you really visualize how much that is, that's a lot, right? 500,000 units, 500,000 people. But for the games industry, that's nothing. And you will spend $60,000. This is just the ballpark, by the way. This is not sensitive information. But you will pay $60,000 to put an ad of your game on a bus, right? Like several buses in a metropolitan area. And you are hoping and praying that metropolitan area bus will help sell your game. Which is wild to me, if you really think about it. Absolutely nuts. Because I don't think I've ever looked at a bus and I said, man, that game looks cool. I should get that. Right? I don't know.
Yeah,
That's
and
just me.
what's really funny for me is a lot of times those games are the ones that you probably would have bought anyways.
Right. Right.
Like they're the ones like Assassin's Creed, like Call of Duty or whatever. That everybody knows there's gonna be a new one coming out. Like, yeah, it's amazing
Yeah.
to me.
I think there is a there is an ad. I remember several like commercials coming out for like back in the day, like 90s era commercials where they were like doing Crash Bandicoot stuff, and they were making Crash do some whack shit, and he was like, it was just an actor in a mascot costume, right? But
Yeah.
if you think about it today, that likely cost them around $100,000 just to put, like, hundreds of thousands of dollars just to make that commercial, adjusted for inflation. Nuts to me. But that's the kind of marketing that you expect now. Wild.
Yeah, and it's come a long way from the back pages of magazines, right? And it's just amazing to me that like it really has gone to the point where it's pretty much a movie release. It's
It really
mind-blowing.
is. Yeah, because you will have a lot of like Tokyo Game Show. You will have Nintendo Treehouse. You'll have all of these like very specific small streams where a company can just tweet, "Oh, we're going to have a Nintendo Direct, tomorrow at 6 a.m." And you have all of these people like lining up, queuing up to wait into the YouTube video or the Twitch stream, like, "Oh my God, I don't know what they're gonna announce. It's gonna be so hype," and that sort of really falls back into brand loyalty again. It's just like, oh, you're
Yep.
just you're waiting to see, what's gonna be released this year, the next coming year. So much hype, and I think that a lot of the industry has actually catered itself and its marketing to hype crowd, hype culture.
Yeah, that's absolutely fair. And yeah, it really does come down to brand loyalty and like getting people excited about a product. And I found it always a little bit hilarious because like these products are products that a lot of people would buy anyways, regardless.
Yeah.
So it's I'd love to be a fly on the wall in a meeting where they're discussing trying to do these marketing campaigns for products that everybody loves in beginning, like to begin with. Like it's
Yeah.
interesting to me.
Yeah, it's one of the things that I like to fall back on, and actually Roman Knox Lucent in my chat, he said, I feel like it's subconscious. The more you see the game, the more you remember you want to buy it. And
That's
I
fair.
think that's what they think, and I think that is also a very, very valid point. Like, even if you are planning on buying it, it's just that subconscious reminder, oh yeah, the game's gonna come out in like a couple days. I'm gonna remember to buy it, when I get home or whatever. But like, to the point that I was gonna say earlier is, yeah, I think a lot of people, if I tell people who play Final Fantasy 14, which is my vice, my game of choice at the moment, which is an MMO, if I tell them, what do you think is the most successful in telling people or convincing people to pick up the game and start playing? And it's so funny to me that players of a game will market your game for you. You don't even have to really do anything if you are successful in a specific brand or even a specific live service game or MMO game. You hardly have to do anything. The players will do it for you if you do a good job. I think
Yep.
that's one of my favorite things ever, and you probably see this copy pasta a lot where you can start playing the free trial of Final Fantasy XIV and get the award-winning expansion Heaven's Ward. You can play for free up to level 60 with no restrictions on playtime. And that is a spiel that was said once in marketing, and now every player of Final Fantasy XIV will say that constantly to everybody that will hear it. To their friends who don't play it, to their friends that do play it. It's nuts. It's like a brainworm.
Yeah, and like it always blows my mind because from how niche video games used to be to how mainstream they are today, it's been a pretty spectacularly fast evolution. Like, for example, like with television, that took, probably about 40, 50 years before it really kicked in. Radio, same deal. Video games, within 10 years, it became pretty much mainstream, and then 10 years after that, it was mainstream.
Yes. It's cool to play video games now.
Yeah, it really is.
It didn't used to be.
So I want to circle back a little bit, back to the comments on GTA with parental supervision and everything, because that reminded me of something that we hadn't discussed yet, and that's the ESRB. For those who don't know, that's the Entertainment Sophomore Reading Board. And they're the ones that came up with the rating system of MA and 14 and all those other ones, right?
Yes.
Now, those were a direct response to video games like Mortal Kombat, Doom, and Night Trap. They were for things for controversial games or violent games or sexually charged games, right?
Yes.
So the organization itself formed in 94, right? So that's not exactly 100 years ago, right? It's something that's pretty recent. But when GTA hit the scene, that's when kind of the shit hit the fan.
Yes.
Because it doesn't really matter what the ESRB says as far as the game rating goes. They're still selling to the parent, right?
Yes.
So because of that, it's kind of changed, first off, the way things are marketed. Because originally GTA was marketed just like any other video game, and people thought video games were for kids, right?
Yes.
So it's
I have a funny anecdote about that too.
Hey, go off.
When I was younger, my mom wanted to get me a cool video game for my birthday, and not really knowing any better, because she is English is her second language, and so she didn't really understand rating systems and things like that. She just thought, oh, cute video game, I'll buy it, right? And so she went to the local GameStop and she purchased Conker's Bad Fur Day for my very young birthday.
Oh, shit.
Because she thought that the squirrel on the cover was drinking apple juice.
Wow. Yeah, and I guarantee you're not the only one that's happened to. Like, I was playing GTA with my friends once, and we were in this online public server and everything. We were going ham. We were having a hell of a time. We were blowing everything up just because we could. And speaking of, hey Kaz, how's it going? So yeah, we were kind of just having fun because normally we leave people alone if they leave us alone. We're not hyper aggressive players. We're there to fuck around.
And find out.
Yeah, exactly. Well, these people found out. They came after us, and we just unloaded. Well, this kid started yelling and screaming at us, leave me alone, and very much a kid. You could hear him crying, and we stopped. We're like, oh, what that's very weird. We're literally playing with a child here. Next thing we know, the mom's on the mic. Who is this and why are you playing? Look, this is a game for adults. It is an online game. This is not a space for children. It is never marketed as a space for children. And apparently that kid had told his mom that it was just a driving game.
Yeah.
So
It's very unfortunate.
yeah, and it puts people like me, for example, in a bad situation,
Right.
because here I am, like just like destroying a kid in a video game, when I had absolutely no intention of targeting a child, right?
Right, yeah. If you think that you're playing a video game with other adults, then you're gonna get saucy, you know?
Yep. Yeah, and like something that a lot of people don't really think about is you never know the profession of somebody who's playing a video game. They could be a mechanic, they could be a teacher, they could be a politician, right? They could be pretty much anything. And if, for example, if you're playing a game and you're a teacher, let's say you're an elementary school teacher, right? You go into this game and you go online and you're cursing up a storm and you're hitting a kid with an RPG and you ran somebody else over and this and that gets out that you're doing that online to a kid. Like, you could lose your job for that.
Yeah, that's pretty rough.
So it really is difficult because online gives you the freedom of playing with your friends. It gives you the freedom of finding new people and having different experiences, this and that. But it also comes with an inherent danger that's unavoidable at this point. Now, that's something that I did want to discuss because several pieces of legislation have come from that phenomenon. One, again, is the ESRB, also with the International Age Rating Coalition, so IARC. Then there's also a Supreme Court case from 2011, Brown versus the Entertainment Merchants Association, which actually ruled that video games are protected speech and laws that control them are unconstitutional. And so that was definitely interesting. But there's also been watchdog groups and like incidents where like content was hidden originally and then like released later. For example, one creation from GTA San Andreas was a user mod, right? And this player modded the game and put some shit into the game, and it got out. The company had no control over that. It was something that was put into the modding community, but Rockstar still ended up getting hit and having to defend themselves in court. So GTA, Mortal Kombat, games like that, they literally affect our government. Like,
Yes.
it's the reach is way beyond just a game console at home.
I want to bring up actually a really compelling case that isn't U.S. based at all, but in Belgium and the Netherlands. They actually very recently, up until literally a year ago, during the pandemic, had ruled that loot boxes in games and any games that do loot box mechanics are illegal because it is gambling.
Yep.
And they have ruled that gambling is illegal in their country. And especially because loot box mechanics are very highly accessible to children.
Yeah, and like for that matter, going back again to GTA, there was an update with a casino because Rockstar sold shark cards. They had that online currency that they were selling.
Yeah, shark cards, the online currency for people not in the know.
Yeah.
It's like you buy with real money in-game currency.
Yep. So you got the shark cards that were a very big part of the income for Rockstar. But then they also have a casino where you can literally gamble. So is that actually gambling in the eyes of the United States government? Or is it just a video game? Right? So that was an entirely other can of worms. And that just because of that one issue, an entire release for the casino update got pushed back like 2 years.
Yes. Yeah, very hot topic.
Yeah, it made things very difficult for them. So online gaming really, it's changed so much. It's gone from World of Warcraft to GTA to Final Fantasy 14. Now, one thing I did want to talk about is Final Fantasy as a series.
Oh boy.
Yeah. So it's actually one of my favorite series of all time.
Me too.
I played all of them through 10. Now, I've kind of fallen off in recent years because work gets in the way.
Understandable. Yeah, man, JRPG exhaustion is very real.
Yep.
For me in particular. I love JRPGs, but I get so exhausted playing them. They're just very long.
Yeah, and like you could put hundreds of hours into these games and still not be completely finished.
Mm-hmm.
It's just so immersive and humongous.
Yes.
So, you probably know a little bit more about Final Fantasy than I do. Now,
Just a little.
yeah. So, so back when it first came out, the first edition of Final Fantasy was in the 80s, right? Or 80s, early 90s?
Yes, the very, very first Final Fantasy was released on the NES, just Final Fantasy, and it was titled Final Fantasy because they believed that it would be the last game that they would ever create for that particular studio. They were not doing very well monetarily, and so if Final Fantasy did not take off, that was it.
Yeah, and like I always wondered about that because growing up, I'd see the next Final Fantasy came out, and the next one, and the next one. I'm like, how is it still a Final Fantasy? So, like, yeah, I always laughed about that, but I never knew about that. That's interesting.
Yeah.
I can see why they did it now.
Yeah, I mean, at this point now, because it did so much for Squaresoft at the time, they just kept it because it's sort of like precedent. Final Fantasy had done so well that if they had released Final Fantasy 2 in Japan, then they knew that it would do that well too, because people would see, oh, it's another Final Fantasy game, I gotta get it.
Yep, and there's that brand loyalty again.
Yep, exactly. And you know what? It was a bop. It slapped.
Yeah, and like Final Fantasy is one of the most fascinating games for me because the one thing that I've always appreciated about it is it's always evolving and adapting to both technology and gaming styles.
Mm-hmm.
So the original Final Fantasy is absolutely nothing like what you see for 14, right?
Absolutely not. Well, okay, there's a lot of very fun cameos and a lot of very fun nods to the original, which is FF14 in its entirety does quite a bit to call back to its predecessors in a very fun and unique way. But I digress. Yes, visually it is very different. Gameplay wise, it is very different.
Yeah, if you look at Final Fantasy just as a whole, from 1 to 14, just there's more coming, I'm guessing. But so if you look at Final Fantasy as a whole, you could actually look at it and see the evolution of gaming as a whole.
Yes.
So that's something that I've always really appreciated, because Zelda, for as amazing as it is, the graphics in the games haven't shifted that amazingly, right? It's shifted. Yes, it's 3D now and all that stuff, but like the hyper realism you see in a lot of Final Fantasy stuff, especially in the cutscenes,
and
it's
I
just
would
next
argue
level.
that it doesn't need to. I would argue that Zelda as a series doesn't necessarily need to be hyper realistic. I don't
agree.
think that just as an art form and as by design, it is one of those games where simple can be just as effective as being able to see the individual sweat glands on Cloud Strife's face.
Yeah, it's I think Final Fantasy, the reason I latch onto it so much is because it's been around since pretty much the beginning of the console wars and
Yep.
before, right? It's been through every stage of console gaming, and that's something that a lot of games can't say, or most games can't say.
Yep, that's
And
true.
throughout its evolution, throughout the evolution of gaming, Final Fantasy has been there. So it's really cool to look back on the art styles, on the technology levels, the rendering. You look at how it's changed over the years, and some jumps are more spectacular than others, but you can see a steady evolution in both style and technique, and also technology
And gameplay.
and gameplay. Yeah, because I mean, like, if you look at the first Final Fantasy, that was like, you push a button, it makes a decision.
Yep.
You know, it wasn't even
Turn-based.
turn-based. Yeah, it was barely even turn-based at that point. Like, they give you a choice of dialogue, and then you push A or B, and then you move on.
Mm-mm.
The one that really sticks out, and probably one of the reasons they made a remake of it, is Final Fantasy VII,
Yes.
because I forget if 7 came before or after Tactics.
7, the original came. Ooh, I'm gonna have to turn in my Square Enix card if I get this wrong. Tactics came after Final Fantasy VII.
Okay, so Tactics kind of called back to the original.
Yes, a little bit.
Yeah, it kind of called back to the original, whereas Final Fantasy VII, it kind of just took it to that next tier when it came to RPGs.
Mm-hmm.
And after Final Fantasy VII, they just kept getting more and more and more spectacular.
Yes, and they changed the formula a lot as well.
Yes. Can you talk a little bit more on that? But before you do, I want to say hi to Kaz and Mari. Welcome in. I'm talking with Sammish. We're talking
Hello,
video games,
that's
and we're
me.
having some fun.
That's me. Hi. Really quick, I also want to catch up on the chat too. Mike Webb in the chat said Final Fantasy IX is greater than Final Fantasy VII. I will agree. People will maybe lambast me for that, but I love Final Fantasy IX. Anyways, yeah. So Final Fantasy as a series has grown so much and changed so much with every iteration. So Final Fantasy 1 was a very simple turn-based RPG. There wasn't a lot of actually, if I recall correctly, there isn't a single dialogue option. You are expected to agree with the story and go along with it, and you are expected to be heroes that will do the thing even if you personally as a player did not want to. You just had to do it. In Final Fantasy II, they introduced new mechanics where you could actually save dialogue that was highlighted in a different text as something that you remember. It's like saved into like this word bank, and you can recall those words in future conversations to help progress the story or find out what you have to do next. And then it would keep going. Final Fantasy III would introduce classes that you can pick, and you can change, what classes you want to be. And you would keep going. All the way up until you would get to FF7 would introduce materia. FF8 would introduce drawing as a feature where you would have to pull spells from enemies, and you would have to use that to grow stronger in a sense, because drawing spells would power up your GFs or guardian forces, and then that's how you would progress in the game. And now it has gone so crazy because you would go from turn-based combat to turn-based combat with a lot of different sort of bits of spice and flavor thrown in. And then you would get to FF12, which would introduce a gambit system. And it was like people who know how to code it was like you would put code in the game. You would create macros where if NPC reaches half health, cast cure. And you would create these macros to make fighting and different gameplay mechanics easier or even more streamlined. And it created such an interesting, complex level of gameplay. And then after 12, you had 13, which was like it was very, very similar in the sense that you had such a greater movement. Even though the storyline itself was rather linear. And then 15, you just run around. It's just like an open world. And that's kind of like the style of games that you can see in the industry as a whole, going from the very first FF to today. How it was usually very simple, and that was all you really needed. You just needed a straightforward story. You didn't have to interact too much with the narrative. You just had to do the thing. Get the MacGuffin, beat the boss, win the game, credits. But now it's an open world where a lot of games these days really want to make it so that you spend hundreds of hours in it. You have 5 billion quests. You've got, different endings that, can happen within a single playthrough of the game, but you choose these certain dialogue paths or whatever. You do certain quests, and suddenly you have a wholly different ending than what you would have gotten, 5 minutes ago. And it's such an interesting evolution that we have seen from game design, that I think some people will either say they are a big fan of it or they just don't care for it. But yeah, that's kind of like FF in a nutshell. Like how it's evolved has really directly related to games in the industry.
Yeah, and
That was
as far as Final Fantasy 7 and 8 and 9 and everything, as far as those go, I think the reason I latch on to 7 is because of the nostalgia of it, because it was my first Final Fantasy game. But also, it had this little character in it that was a lion tiger thing.
Red 13?
Yeah, that little guy.
Yeah.
And he had his little town because he had his feathers in his hair.
Yes.
And he had his little town that was kind of like a cliff dwelling.
Mm-hmm.
For some reason, I identified with that.
It felt very like, I guess, it felt non-stereotypically white. It felt more native, I guess you could say.
Yeah, well, I mean, if you think about it, how much Native American representation has there been in video games?
Almost none.
Yeah, so a couple that come to mind is Nightwolf from Mortal Kombat.
Mm-hmm.
Then you had what was the name of it? Turok. It was very native-like.
Oh, Turok! I remember that. Yes.
Yeah. And then after that, that's about it.
Mm-hmm.
So any native character that comes out in a game, I will latch onto immediately. And that was as close as it got for me with Final Fantasy. So I've always latched onto 7 because of that. That little guy's my
that's
favorite.
totally fair. It's totally fair.
Yeah,
I think
Julie
7...
from Tekken.
Oh yes, Julie, that's right. Oh yes. Shout out to Tekken. Tekken's such a good game.
Yeah.
But yeah, honestly, I don't fault you for that at all, because 7 was honestly probably the first FF for a lot of folks, I think. Because FF, I think if you're, someone in our age group, we probably didn't have the most, like, brain power is not the right word. But we at the age that FF7 came out, we could appreciate the story beats of FF7, right?
Yep.
Because FF7 in its entirety is environmentalism. It is about trying to save the environment from the harmful aspects of capitalism and what it's doing to the planet. And I think that, at the age that it came out, the age that we could appreciate that sort of thing. And we could also appreciate, the complex narratives that, like, what was going on with Don Corneo, what was going on with Shinra, what was going on with Hojo. And I think that for its time, it was an excellent game, and it was a game that desperately needed to be released.
Yes.
I've got a lot of strong onions about what they're doing with 7 right now, but I don't know necessarily that we need to go into that unless you want to.
That's completely up to you. But I will say that I've always appreciated how you can look at a given video game and see the world it was created in.
Yes.
Not the lore behind it, because obviously I appreciate the lore behind the games.
Sure.
But the context in which it was created.
Yes.
You could see that in a lot of games, and that's something that I appreciated about the Call of Duty series, especially the earlier Call of Duty, which had a lot to do with the Cold War.
Mm-hmm.
The people who were making the game, who were writing for the game and everything, were people who grew up in the Cold War. So, like, you see that, and that history, that mentality, their worldview shines through in the game, whether they want it to or not. So you could also see that again in Final Fantasy. In the late 90s, there was a lot of issues with environmentalism because companies were completely unchecked as far as dumping chemicals and shit goes.
Yeah.
In New Mexico, there was a river that completely turned yellow, like toxic yellow, because they were dumping from a mine.
Yuck.
So, like, that was something that we saw every day. We saw the pollution. We saw the uncontrolled pollution, right?
Mm-hmm.
So, because we saw that, it made more sense to see, not more sense, it made the game more relatable to see that kind of theme being reflected in it.
Yeah. Actually, if I can go back really quick, there is something that I wanted to bring up. And actually, probably one other thing, because someone in my chat, Echo Fiends, wanted us to talk about the evolution, the genre shift from early FFs, from medieval fantasy to science fantasy, or science fiction, or modern fantasy. But yeah, I really want to talk about what Walt had said was NFTs.
NFTs.
So
Before you do that, real quick,
go ahead.
just want to address something in chat. Yes, there is herpes monkeys in Florida.
Okay.
Yes, I have a little note in my announcements section. So there's herpes monkeys in Florida. A guy brought a bunch of monkeys as a tourism thing, and he put them on an island. He didn't know those monkeys could swim. They escaped and came into contact with a lab monkey that had herpes, and spread it from there. And now there's a bunch of monkeys with herpes running around northern Florida. So there you go. Okay, your thing.
What a segue. That's very good. Well, now you know. The more you know. But what I was going to say about NFTs is that what I had mentioned earlier about what they are currently doing with FF7. And this is probably a little bit of a sticking point for me, is that FF7 to me has always been a story about environmentalism and saving the planet. But what they are currently doing right now, if you haven't heard, is they are selling figurines of Cloud from FF7 Remake, but they are selling an NFT with it. So they're basically saying, if you buy this specific cloud figure, they're only going to make a limited run of this particular figure, and with each figure, it's going to come with an NFT of that figure. Which is the absolute most bullshit thing that I have ever heard, considering FF7 is about environmentalism and NFTs are inarguably, is that a word? Anyway, they are unquestionably bad for the environment. And so it steams my broccoli that they're using a cloud figure to sell an NFT. Rant over.
Yeah, and it's just so unapologetically capitalist to do that.
Yes, it is. I think a lot of people have probably said this before, but the argument that Square Enix is starting to feel a lot like Shinra Corp is not wrong.
Yeah, and like if you look at a bunch of different companies, they're not the only ones doing that kind of thing. Which NFTs are a whole other can of worms that I don't have a firm grasp on, honestly, because it's actually evolving really quickly, and it's moving too quickly for a historian to keep up. See, as a historian, I research things in depth. I look at not only what is happening, the primary sources, but I also look at what's been written about it and what's been said about it, how things reacted to it, and everything like that. So, because of that, things like NFTs that evolve so quickly,
right?
It's something that I haven't been able to get a firm grasp on because it's moving too fast.
I see. Yeah, I mean that's honestly not surprising to me. Actually, someone literally in my chat just asked, not really sure how NFTs are bad for the environment. Not saying that they're not, just not really kind of confused about why it is bad. And Sab, aka Perrin, just posted a great YouTube video. I'll go ahead and post it in your chat too, if that's okay. I don't know if I need a link.
I think you should be able to be good. I think.
Okay, let me grab it real quick and I post it in your chat as well. It is by Foldable Human, which is a really great video essayist. Oh, thank you, Cassie. You caught me right before I posted it. Woo! Nice save. But yeah, it is a very long video, but it is extremely informative and comprehensive. But the gist of it is, the way that NFTs are minted is by a lot of essentially electronic resources, and this is why you have such a shortage on graphic cards these days, right? I don't really know how they do it, but they use just a mass of these graphic cards, and they will mint NFTs, but it will use so much electrical resources and power resources that it could light up a football stadium like within a matter of just like maybe a day or two of trying to mint these NFTs. That's a lot of energy. And it uses a lot of resources for our planet as well. And so I highly encourage people to check out that video if they have the time. It is a lengthy one, but is very informative and very good.
Yeah, and on top of that, this is something I do understand on this one. So on top of that, the equipment burns out really quickly because this stuff puts off a lot of heat.
Yes.
So not only does it use a lot of resources as far as electricity goes, which means you have to produce more electricity, but it also takes electricity from residential areas.
Yes.
And it produces so much heat that you have to use more electricity to keep the building even livable. So then on top of that, it produces so much heat that the parts burn out so much quicker. So since they're buying and using so many graphic GPUs,
yes,
they're using so many of them that they've caused a worldwide shortage. And caused the prices of those to spike, which caused the production of them to spike, which caused even more damage to the environment because of technological waste, mining, and production.
Yes. Thank you for going in depth with it. I have word, but brain no work.
That's fair. We pick up the slack for each other here.
Yeah, brain machine broke.
But yeah, I completely get that. That's something that people you can even see it today, like looking at your PC or whatever. I don't know what you're running, but mine's not running liquid cool. It's just running on fans, and you could feel the heat coming off of the thing, and that's just with one. So imagine a building with 10,000 of them.
Yeah, I literally, as you were saying that, I just turned on my fan because I was getting really toasty next to my PC. So if you guys hear that on the mic, I am so sorry. I'm not to dox myself. I'm in California. It's fucking hot.
Yes, California is specific enough that they should know exactly where you live.
Yeah. Yeah. You know that part where you can get boba? That's where I live.
Yeah. I live in Texas. You know that part where you can get barbecue?
Oh fuck yeah, I love that part.
Yeah. Yeah, except we got shitty Mexican food here.
Wait, but sorry, you live in Texas. You should have good Mexican food.
Yeah,
What?
right next to the border.
Okay, that's fair.
Like where I'm originally from, the Mexican food is beyond compare. All right?
Mm-mm.
But here, not so much. It's not great. I'm
I
not gonna
see.
lie.
I'm sorry. That's sad.
Hey,
Pretty sad.
it is. It really is. But because of that, I've lost 50 pounds. So, trade-offs.
Okay, we take those.
I'll take it as a win.
Yep. We got wildly off topic. but
Yes, we did.
That was fun.
And that's just how it works around here.
Yeah.
Off-topic happens. So, back to the topic. Let me see. We talked about hypersexualization. We talked about... I know exactly where I wanted to go. And I'm trying to figure out exactly where I was going to go next. Give me just a second. I know there was something in particular that I wanted to talk about.
Oh, actually, while you're looking for that, the thing that Echo wanted us to talk about really quick, and I can spiel this off. You can just do your thing while you look. But the interesting genre shift between medieval fantasy to modern sci-fi, etc. fantasy is really a different pulse on what the current social and political climate finds most interesting. I think that as I mentioned before, FF7 came out at a fantastic time because it was about environmentalism. It was about how frankly frightening it was
Hey,
that
I just got a
these
follower. Nice.
oh,
Thank
what?
you, Perrin.
Oh, yay! Cool. Welcome in. Sab, Blessed Sab is a mod for my channel and also one of my best friends. But yeah, so the genre shift is directly correlated to that's what the people really wanted at that time. And I think that back in the day. I think medieval fantasy was something that was very palatable. It was during that time that Dungeons and Dragons started to be immensely popular. That was around the 80s that it came out, and tabletop games and things like that. That was very the beat of the heart of creativity and being a nerd. But as we move on, you have people who are like, oh well, I think it would be cool if we explored a fantasy that was a little bit more modern than that to pull in the kids,
Yep.
And so that's why you get Final Fantasy VII, which did show a lot of the harmful effects of moguls and corporate structures and what they're doing to the environment. You have 8, which was largely based on academia, and how academia and militarism were almost inextricably linked. And then it went back to fantasy for a bit for 9, which is why I actually like 9 so much. Welcome in, Kazman. I saw you from Snacks Chat. Welcome in.
Yeah, Kaz is one of my best friends of all time. He's one of the most amazing people I know.
Right, for sure. But yeah, I think that it's interesting how, a lot of genre shifts you can in Final Fantasy in particular used to be a very like, oh, we want to just capture the pulse of the current, what people like at the time. And I can't even begin to say how relevant that is now, because open world games are very, very popular just across the entire gaming industry. And so now all of the Final Fantasy games that are going to come out from here until open world games are not fun anymore are going to be open world. FF15 was open world, FF16 will be open world also. And until that stops being cool, we will keep making them. That's just how it is.
Yeah, and I don't think I'll ever get tired of open world games, just because there's so much to do, even if it's repetitive in some ways. Like, just exploring maps is fun.
Mm-hmm.
And going back to your other point about the games reflecting what's going on and what's popular and everything, that's a really good point. Like, if you look back in the 80s, you had movies like Excalibur and Black Cauldron and Princess Bride and
yes, definitely.
all those movies that come out that were very medieval and knights and stuff like that. Conan the Destroyer, right?
Yeah, Labyrinth, man.
Labyrinth, exactly. And those stories they were permeating pretty much every part of the social consciousness as far as entertainment goes.
Oh, that's such a good word. Social consciousness. That's the word that I was wanting to think. But brain machine broke.
Big words are what historians do.
Yeah. Good job.
But yeah, like those movies, they're iconic now, right? They're household names. Everybody knows these movies. But back then, they were fresh. They were new. They were the cool thing. LARPing was becoming a really big thing, and because of that, like you said, with D&D coming out, that stuff being so popular at that point, at least within the nerd community, quote unquote, because it was so popular, then Final Fantasy reflected that.
Yeah, absolutely. And wanted to call out Echo was saying something. Definitely begs the question, would cause them to go back to medievalism again for FF16. I'm gonna put this out, and you don't have to take it as word of mouth or anything. Game of Thrones.
Yep.
Game of Thrones. Game of Thrones was
there's been
so
a King
popular.
Arthur movie. There's been lots of medieval type movies that have come out recently.
Yeah.
Within the last 5 years ish, we're going through another phase of medieval stuff. The King Arthur stuff's really popular. Crusade stuff is really popular. Guaranteed, we're gonna have another Robin Hood movie come out soon.
Yeah. I mean, Robin Hood, as just a concept, would do very well in the current political environment.
Yep, absolutely.
And I think, definitely, you see this in the fashion industry as well. Just to actually bring up my fucking major for once in my life. Everything is very cyclical, Yep. Something will be out of fashion for a bit, and then you wait a couple of years, and then you bring it back again, and then suddenly, oh man, that shit tight. That shit's cool now again for a couple of years. And then, in a couple of years from now, we're going to go back to the big, sci-fi, Alien, Predator, that type of thing. Once again, Although I guess you could argue with Nope, aliens are still popular.
Yeah, I
I
mean, the
haven't
thing
seen
is,
Nope yet, but
like, it follows the thread of history too. History is
Mhm.
very cyclical. There's a very famous quote, that they said, history repeats itself. Everybody's heard that, but that's not really true. There's a not more famous quote among historians. There's a more famous quote that's history doesn't repeat itself; it rhymes.
Mhm.
It goes in cycles. You have cycles of conquest, and you have cycles of rise and fall of empires. You have cycles of technology growth, and those cycles happen and can be very easily tracked. You can see when
Yes.
these cycles are showing up, and like how they might evolve in the future.
Yeah.
So there's something that a lot of historians do. It's a what about and what if. So there's some historians that have actually been hired to try and predict what's going to happen in the future, for like war games and stuff like that, for planning. And there's also historians that have made entire careers out of what would have happened if, sake of argument, let's say if Hitler didn't kill himself, what would have happened, right?
Yeah.
So
And I'm pretty sure that they made that a show too, didn't they?
yeah,
They made that like a whole thing on like Netflix or whatever.
yeah, and we use those cycles of everything that happens. We use those cycles to kind of map out what's happening around certain periods of time.
Mm-hmm.
So
Mm-hmm.
that's something that we pay a very close attention to.
Mm-hmm. Yeah.
Hey, Tina, how's it going? So yeah, and speaking of fashion, you could actually see the way fashion has both influenced and been influenced by history.
Yeah.
So
My
that's cool.
my very embarrassing anecdote. Well, maybe it's not that embarrassing. I am kind of proud of it, but I think games games in general, growing up and playing all of these games, and actually I believe it was Final Fantasy X and X-2 in particular, if you can believe it, that inspired me to take fashion design as my major in college, that I proceeded to do nothing with, by the way, but I somehow ended up in the games industry anyway. So there you go.
Yeah, and I mean, for better or worse, those games, the 10 and 10-2, were kind of at the peak of like when technology was kind of evolving,
Mm-hmm.
and after that it's kind of plateaued, but it's like still up there. You know what I'm trying to say, right? We haven't like
Yeah, yeah,
regressed
yeah.
or anything like that.
Yeah.
But like as far as growing in leaps and bounds, 10-2 came out around the time where it kind of peaked.
Yeah.
So that's really interesting to see. But with the fashions and everything that were in it, like
Yeah.
they took it to the next level. They created this world that like the fashion not only was influenced by fashion in places like Japan, but
Mm-hmm.
also went on to influence fashion. So
Yes.
like it's really cool. And for
Yeah.
better or worse, like no matter what you say about those games themselves, I really liked 10. I really did like
Yeah.
10. I had a great time with it. 10-2 not so much. Um but
That's a very popular opinion, I think, for 10-2, but I am a stand for 10-2. And I will shamelessly support that game,
well,
because it
I'll
was
just
very
say
fun.
I'll just say that 10-2 is the only Final Fantasy game that I did play that I didn't
Mhm.
finish.
Okay, that's fair. I think that I think that 10-2 is definitely a game that you don't really take super seriously, but you try to approach it from a different angle, because yes, it is a fan servicey game. We won't mince words here. It was very fan servicey, but
Yep.
it did have a lot of merits. It did have actually a very fun gameplay. Gameplay mechanics such as the dress sphere system and things like that. The combat was fantastic in it, in my opinion. Um, and I think that it illustrated how a universe in a game can evolve even just in a couple of years, because
Yep.
I think that's really neat about sequel games, is you see how the the climate and the world that you have played in once before has changed over time, or in some cases hasn't changed at all. And I think that's a very fun narrative aspect of 10.2 and sequel games in general.
Yeah, and going back to one of our earlier topics, 10-2 was all female protagonists for the most part, at the beginning at least.
That's
so
right.
I didn't get very far into the game, but I remember when I first started out in the game, it was all women, and that's something that I hadn't seen before.
That's right. That's right. Another call out of fashion influencing games, influencing fashion again. I don't know if you knew this, but for FF13, they had Lightning, the protagonist, collab with Louis Vuitton for
Wow.
a whole fashion spread. It was literally, I want to say it was a 5 to 6 different ad campaign spread where Lightning would model different products from Louis Vuitton, bags, clothes, shoes. I think at some point she did model jewelry and watches as well.
See, and that's when you really know that something's hit the mainstream.
Right.
Like, it's not a niche anymore when
No.
organizations like Louis Vuitton are getting involved.
Walt wants to ask a question about FF8. Absolutely. I love to talk about FF in general, but also if you have other topics you want to talk about too, go for it. I don't want to monopolize the stream with Final Fantasy because I can go off.
Hey, go off. We got time.
Oh wait. What is up with the censored screens mid-battle? Censored screens. You've seen a move that literally makes a censor screen and makes the enemy disappear. I don't remember that. You might have to link you might have to link a video for that in particular. If you find it, Walt, you can link it. If you find that. But yeah, going back to FF and inspiration and just actually devs in general. I think the most prevalent part of how art and game design and concepts evolve is what the particular dev is interested in. Tetsuya Nomura is a avid fan of taking in fashion inspiration, particularly from Akiba, and as well as Shibuya, and other niche aspects. I think you can see very clearly for Kingdom Hearts 3 that his inspiration was the punk subgenre because there's so much plaid. But it's very fascinating to see how, game devs will take this inspiration. And to go back to 10, I think that why I like 10 so much, aside from it being a hyper saturated thematic game, is the fact that in 10, I don't believe that I've ever seen another Final Fantasy introduce so much Indian, Southeast Asian, and other types of Asian influences and inspiration in the world as well as the fashion than I have with 10. And I think it's one of the games that, like, concept wise and design wise, that has inspired me the most. And I don't see that a lot in a lot of recent games anymore.
Yep. Well, that actually brings up something else that I wanted to discuss, and that's something that in the anthropology world we call othering. I don't know if you know what the term really means. For those of you who don't, othering is pretty much making an us versus them mentality, and making the hero, the protagonist, is very associated with us, and then the bad guy is the other, the just the evil, I guess. And that's something you've seen throughout is in video games. Looking at, for example, Street Fighter, you had a very Nazi influenced character.
Yeah.
Looking at several of the Call of Duty games, the Japanese characters, they're all very brutal. You have to dislike them. And that's the theme that's kind of been carried on through a lot of video games where the ethnic other is the bad guy.
Yes.
That's pretty prevalent. Another ethnic other, or not so ethnic other that you see a lot is a British guy. For some reason, the British are always bad guys. And history kind of reflects why that probably is, but yeah, you see it a lot in video games where the bad guys could be British, German, or some minority. They're not gonna be American because America's always the hero. They're not gonna be French.
In Western development.
Yes.
By the way. Yeah.
Yes, I'm talking about the American market.
Sure.
Thanks for clarifying that, by the way.
Yeah, no worries.
Yeah. But yeah, you see that reflected in movies, in TV shows, and you see it reflected in video games. That this othering happens very distinctly. So when you get a video game that doesn't do that as much, that is more inclusive, that has these characters who are not the ethnic other or not the cultural other, what have you, those tend to be actually more appreciated long term than most other games. Like, again, for example, Call of Duty. Call of Duty is a great series. It's a wonderful game. But each individual game has its following for a year or two, and then the next one comes out, and that's it. You don't really hear about it anymore. However, a game like Zelda or a game like Final Fantasy, where they're more inclusive, where they're not creating this ethnic other, those games become legendary, and they become something of a mainstay in not only Americana, but globally, as far as the video game genres and the systems, the consoles, like which characters and platforms they hold on to, like those are reflected, and like that's both a good thing and a bad thing, because some of the stuff ends up coming off as pandering. However, you see this trend continuing throughout a lot of different styles of video game, where the ones that have the ethnic other they do great for a little while and then they drop off. So it's a trend that I've noticed, and I don't know exactly 100% why. But yeah, that's the trend.
Yeah. No, yeah, completely understandable. I think that it is something that othering has always been an issue with media in general. And it is, again, to the point of, well, developers are usually hired. Well, the developers that are usually hired are usually of one kind, right? At least in the beginning.
Yep.
Originally, it was always just cis white men. And you also get the same issue with Japanese devs, where they will primarily hire cis men. And it wasn't up until recently that they have been being more inclusive in their spaces of development, and so othering has become much less. It still definitely exists, but it has become much less.
Yeah, and I'm hoping that's a trend that continues, because it's heading in the right direction. We've come a long way from the times of get those commie bastards to today. You see a lot of the Cold War stuff, which is the 80s. You see a lot of that stuff reflecting a little bit more comic book style games. You see like X-Men and stuff like that in the early 90s. but even with that, you still see that Cold War influence, and the personalities, the characters, and everything reflect that Cold War influence a lot more than, like for example, something that 5 or 10 years after that would have had. So it's always really fascinating to see that, and seeing now what's it reflecting now as far as the inclusivity and everything. Well, I'm hoping that's reflecting that the society as a whole is leaning towards that direction.
Mm-hmm.
So I'm hopeful. Do I really think it's going to improve that much in the next year or two? Probably not. But you see that trend where it's kind of trending right now, and I am hopeful.
Yeah. There's a couple of movements actually going right now in the video game industry, especially in Western companies. And it's called a better blank, and you can fill in the blank for there's a Twitter account called a better ABK, which is a better Activision Blizzard. There is a better Ubisoft Twitter account. And these sorts of movements are very much striving for more inclusivity and rights given to people who don't identify as cis white male in these development companies. It's definitely a movement worth following. If you are a fan of Activision Blizzard games, if you are a fan of Ubisoft games, I encourage you to get to know what's happening to your developers, because it's understandable if you enjoy a game, and it is understandable if you like playing a game, but I think that there's often an argument said that games should not be political, but that is a farce, because
They're always going to be.
They're always going to be political, because the people who make games are human and they have rights. And so everything a developer will make will always be political.
Yep. And everything that is ever made ever, as far as like novels or histories or anything pretty much, it will reflect the worldview of the person that made it. It's gonna. It's a given.
Yep. Definitely.
Yeah. So there's a couple more things that I do want to talk about.
Sure.
So on that subject, I wanted to bring up a game called Days Gone.
Yes.
I don't know if you've played it or if you liked it.
I watched you play it.
You what?
I watched you play it.
Yeah, but have you played it?
Oh no, I haven't. I haven't personally.
Okay. So.
Ooh, hydrate. Everybody hydrate.
Yeah.
I heard that hydrate.
Yeah, I got a 64 ounce of water that I have with me at all times.
Nintendo 64 ounce.
Yeah. So I drink probably about 2 of these a day. So I spend a lot of my time in the bathroom.
That's a mood.
Yep. Anyways, now that TMI is out of the way. So Days Gone. One of the things that I appreciated about that game, because for all intents and purposes, it was a flop. It didn't do well. There are issues with the game. There's some problems in it. There's some glitches and bugs, and there's some story issues and everything like that. But I still enjoyed it. But one of the things that I appreciated is 2 of the main characters. It's a lesbian couple. But the thing is, they didn't make a big deal out of it. It wasn't like in your face. It wasn't, you could tell they weren't making a statement with it or anything like that. They were just characters who were a couple, right? So I appreciated that, because a lot of times you see representation of the LGBT plus community, and it's something that's like really in your face. Like they're trying to, yeah, we're accepting and everything like that. We're progressive and all that. They try and put it, like some of those representations they're a little bit too forceful. Not forceful. What's what I'm looking for?
A little too on the nose.
Yeah. Where in Days Gone, the couple was just a couple, and they had an argument, and like it was just a couple. Like they didn't make a big deal out of it in any way, shape, or form. And that kind of representation is really cool because they were just people. And like, I want to see representation like that more often in games, and I hope that becomes more of a trend.
Definitely agree. There's another game that does a similar sort of thing called Disco Elysium. And in Disco Elysium, one of the primary characters, literally your sidekick, so one of the most visible characters in the game, other than yourself, the protagonist, is gay. But you don't actually find out that he's gay unless you do a specific side quest. And he does say that he is gay. But it never actually becomes a like key facet of who he is. He is honest with you in that he is gay, and it helps you as the protagonist because to go back, Disco Elysium is a game that is highly basically structured by what dialogue choices that you make in the game, and so your stats and how you interact with the world are highly influenced by what types of dialogue choices that you make and the bonds that you make with people. And so you basically come into this community. You're trying to solve this murder, first of all, and you come into this community where it is a sort of like a club kind of thing. It's a club vibe, a very like hippie. You could say hippie, I guess, but essentially very progressive. Whereas the rest of the climate around in this world is very conservative. And so you go into this club and you meet these people and you find out, oh, your sidekick is gay. But you make that connection and you realize that your sidekick can have a lot of empathy with these people, and you start to get more empathy for your sidekick in the meantime. And then after that, that's it. But it's one of those things where it's like, wow, this is representation where the point isn't trying to make that like, he's gay and he's having, relations with a man, and like that's like the crux of his character arc, right? It's literally just he says what he is and then you move on. And it does have some effect on the story beat because he can empathize with these people, but then that's it. There's nothing really else. And I like that too. Things like that it's really cool to see.
Yeah. Like I said, I really hope that more like that starts to come out. So one little thing that I wanted to bring up real quick. So as we know, the gaming systems have really evolved over time. There's no question in that. The first gaming systems had about as much processing power as a calculator. So like now, we pretty much our phones are way more powerful than anything that was around back in the 80s and early 90s.
Yeah.
But I did want to bring one thing up about that, about the original gaming systems. Now we have these console wars that, as everybody knows, everybody has their favorite console. You're gonna be an Xbox fanboy or a PlayStation, whatever. But what if I told you that the console wars almost didn't happen? See, back in the late 70s, one of the founders of Apple got into the gaming industry. He founded a company that is basically EA. They were going to put out their own system based on Apple Macintosh systems. If they had done that, they would have cornered the market at that time. They would have predated Nintendo. They would have predated Sony. They would have predated everybody. And they would have gotten a foothold considering Apple's such a huge company now. Can you imagine if, say, Microsoft had a 10-year head start on everybody as far as video games goes?
Nuts.
Right? So Apple would have been the video game company. So yeah, the console wars almost didn't happen.
You know what? I like a little healthy competition. I
So do
think
I.
a little healthy competition is fine. I get nervous with a lot of mergers.
Yeah, when companies start merging, that's not a good sign.
Yeah.
It really isn't a good sign for anybody. Oh,
Yeah.
hi Morse, how's it going? But yeah, I was wanting to talk about the console wars a little bit, and I'm always fascinated by the fact that today, like, we have three big companies. Disney, yeah, Disney buying up everything. That's not a good thing. Yeah, I just got brought up in chat that Disney is one of the big examples of that, and yeah, they really are. And they got Fox and Marvel and everything now. Like, that's not good. Anyways, so I'm always fascinated by the list of consoles, because, like, there's been about 1,000 consoles that have been made. Now we only know of like 3 major consoles in the gaming community. You got the Nintendo, the PlayStation, and the Xbox. But back in the day, there were like 1,000 different systems. And
Yes.
like, it really is amazing just how quickly that field got narrowed.
Yes.
Like, the first system that came out, well, officially, and it only beat out the other one by like 2 or 3 months, but the first system that came out was the Fairchild Channel F. Have you ever heard of that?
I don't think I've ever heard of that in my goddamn life.
Exactly. That is exactly my point. Like, you've heard of the Atari.
Yes.
The Atari came out a year after this thing. But it was the Fairchild, then it was the RCA Studio 2, then the Bally Astrocade, then the Atari 2600. And that's the one everybody knows of because of Pong. Because that became a household name. But the Atari came out in 1977. All right? There were systems that came out between point A and point B that it's astonishing how they were trying so hard to be that system, to be that breakout, that be the mainstay, that only a couple of them succeeded. And I've always wondered why that is. Because, I mean, obviously some are better than others, but there was just so much variety at that point that I really wonder where technology would have gone if the competition had stayed at that level.
Yes.
So, like, in 1983, he had the first Sega that came out. Not the Genesis, but it was the SG-1000. And that thing was garbage. It wasn't until, let me see, by the time the first true Nintendo came out, by the time the first, like, the NES came out, the Atari had been out for 10 years. So imagine a world where the resources of Apple got put into a system like Atari.
I think that would be pretty nuts.
It
I
really
feel
would.
like with how much monopolization has happened, like, I mean, there's nothing really stopping Apple from creating a game system right now, right? But it's just they have not allocated the resources to do it. But if they had, if they could literally do it today if they wanted. But I think that because they didn't decide to do it back then, there's no precedence for them doing it now. And so, again, that's precedence really taking a part in history. History taking a part in today.
Yep.
Really quick, Cassie redeemed gamer facts. I have a channel point redeem on my stream, where if you redeem channel points, I will tell you one fun gamer fact. And a fun gamer fact that I would like to bring up is that Sega, like, very very, like, they were contemplating on trying to create a console, but because of their current exploits in certain franchises, aka Sonic, they just don't have the funding to support it. So that's my fun gamer fact. Also, Soldier Boy created a console. I don't know if anybody knew that, but Soldier Boy did create a console.
I did not know that.
Yeah, it sucks. It's
But,
basically just a glorified emulator.
yeah, I was actually gonna bring up Sega because Sega's one of those ones that had a lot of potential because the Genesis was amazing. I loved the Sega Genesis. That was great. But then the Saturn came out and the Dreamcast came out, and those were not good systems.
I had a Dreamcast. I actually owned a Dreamcast, and I think that I probably played it only for Sonic Adventure and Sonic Adventure 2, and that's it.
Yeah, and like I think one of the big things that got Sega wasn't so much the console itself, but the politics behind these consoles.
Mm.
So one of the big things is like brand control. Microsoft put their power behind Xbox and everything, and that brand power really shifted a lot from different systems.
Sure.
Like looking at the evolution, not the evolution, the emergence of like Sony exclusive games.
Yeah.
I think that was really good. Now, I think that really is what ended up killing Sega because they didn't get in on that politics game soon enough. They were hoping to keep up like Nintendo did by making these iconic characters and everything, and they just didn't pump out enough iconic characters to really keep up. And I think that's what really ultimately did them in. Like Nintendo ended up like you still get a different iteration of Mario today.
Yeah, you gotta. The
Like
Mario's the poster boy.
yeah, exactly. Like Bash Party, Pokemon. Like it really yeah, Bash Party, Smash Brothers. No, Smash Brothers.
Bash Party, bro. Super Bash Party Melee? Can you imagine?
Yeah, my brain just put a bunch of things together just now, didn't it?
Super Bash Brothers Brawl? Can you imagine?
Yeah,
Everybody's here.
that'd be nuts.
I'm 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 ribbing on you a little bit. We're just having fun here.
Yeah, my
It was
brain
very funny
smushes
to
stuff
me.
together sometimes.
Sometimes.
It's very funny.
Yeah, at least it's not as bad as some of the other stuff that I did. Like for example, Sky Vacuum.
Oh, jizzle physics.
Damn it! I forgot about that already.
I'm never gonna let you live that one down.
Yeah, that's fair. That's probably very fair. Yeah, fucking whoops. Yeah, that's fair. Anyways, but yeah, with the Nintendo systems, all these characters became mainstays and iconic. You had Link, you had Zelda, you had Princess Peach and Mario, and all these different like Donkey Kong. These characters became carried over from one system to the other, and that's really what helped establish them as one of the big mainstays of the gaming industry.
Right.
Xbox had Halo. Sony had What did Sony have?
They had Crash Bandicoot.
Yeah, Crash Bandicoot. Yeah, the mainstay games, the exclusive games, really gave these brands power, and I think that's what ended up killing all the other companies. Not just mergers and buyouts and funding and everything like that, but you can't really make a multi-year, multi-platform company off of Pong,
No,
right?
no,
You
you
can't.
can't.
Like, how are you going to evolve that?
All right. Well, you know what? I think that that's why Nintendo has such a leg up on branding and characters and things like that is because they originally started out as a toy company. So Nintendo knows how to market things that will appeal to people who enjoy toys or children. They know how to create a character that will fit that particular niche. And because they are so good at it, they can continue to dominate the character driven sort of type of video game that people are interested in.
Yep.
Nintendo is like almost 200 years old, isn't it? Yes, well, it is very, very old. Well, okay, maybe not 200 years old, but it is quite old. They started with Hanafuda cards, and they kept making toys and stuff. Yeah. Oh, yes, Sab, that's right. Sony did get Spider-Man, but that's more current. They did get Spider-Man currently.
So Nintendo was founded in 1890, not 1889.
Almost 200 years. What's math? Someone
It's
who's good at math, please do
131, 132.
I'll believe you.
But yeah, so yeah, that's I agree with you. Nintendo's been able to just hold on because of those. Even when what was the system that came out before the Switch?
The Wii U?
Yeah. That one was
Wii
a little
was
bit.
a flop.
Yeah, that was a bit of a flop because they didn't really evolve that much from the Wii.
I think
It's a balance that they have to walk between staying true to their roots, staying true to what works, and not adapting.
Yes.
And Nintendo could have easily died with that.
Yeah, no, absolutely. The Wii U was terrible. It did actually get to a point where Toru Iwata, bless his heart, may he rest in peace, he did actually slash his pay just so he didn't have to fire anybody or lay off anybody due to the terrible what's the word? The terrible reception to the Wii U.
Yeah.
Because it did that badly. And they had invested a lot of money into it. But Giga Chad that he is, he did not lay off anybody during that time.
Yeah, and that's something that can't be said for a lot of other organizations.
Nope.
That's a real. I didn't know about that. That's huge.
Yeah.
That's a good guy right there.
Yeah. Shame he passed.
Yep. But yeah, I was looking at Nintendo the other day. The Switch is doing very well. Their market share in comparison to Sony and Xbox is minuscule. But that's still a minuscule market share of a multi-billion-dollar industry.
Yes.
So that's more than enough to keep them afloat.
Yes. And I would say too that Nintendo does make it work. There are some things. There are some things that Nintendo does that I really do not agree with in terms of certain things that they do with their games, i.e. the I don't know if you remember this, the 3D All-Stars sort of debacle where they only left it open for like a year or so until like March, and then they pulled it off from the shelves. Oh my gosh. Marie, thank you for the sub.
Hey.
Bless you. Here lies these nuts. That's right. But but yeah, like that's one thing that well, Nintendo has done plenty of things now. But you know, they're not like free from sin or anything like that, but comparatively speaking, they don't need to make the absolute most money in the world. Whereas a lot of other first party and even third party publishers, they feel like they have to make the most money at most all the time. And that's why you see microtransactions, live service games, loot boxes, this, that, and the other. And I think that really when you get back to the roots of it, video games don't really need to have the best graphics in order to be successful. They don't need to have, the most expansive world ever to be successful.
Just look at Among Us.
Yeah, look at Among Us. You can look at Hollow Knight. You can look at Shovel Knight. You can look at so many incredibly Undertale. Oh my god, I almost forgot Undertale. You cannot forget Undertale.
It just has to be fun.
Yeah,
that's the only thing that has to be. It's fun. I mean, some platforms, some games, they have to have that awe-inspiring graphics that just blow your mind. Some of them need that, but it's not necessary for all of them. Especially a lot of the more story-driven ones.
Mm-hmm.
So I completely agree with that.
Yeah,
and I've been watching this drawing evolve, and it's getting more and more adorable. That's the cutest thing ever.
I'm very glad. Thank you. I'm very, very glad. I want to do a little bit more with it, hopefully, before we wrap up for today. But
no, we still got a couple of things to talk about.
Yeah.
So one of the issues that Sammish did it, so of course it's precious.
What?
What?
But yeah, one of the things that I was wanting to talk about is video game flops. Because obviously not all of them can be gems. Some of them flop harder than others, though. Days Gone was a flop. It was going to be this massively popular game, and for some reason it just did not live up to the hype.
I think it was. I don't think that it's largely its fault. I think it just came out at a time where other games were also out that were very, very good.
Yeah,
it's just an unfortunate timing.
However, there are some other games that they did not do so well, and some of them actually ended up killing the company that made them.
I can't wait to see who you're going to talk about.
Well, I was going to talk about E.T. the Extraterrestrial.
Oh, God.
Classic.
1982. That has to be one of the absolute biggest flops of all time. I think they made like 1 million copies and sold like 100.
Yeah.
Like that has to be the greatest flop of all time. And Atari was never the same after that. Like they were done. Like after that they were never the same. That hit hurt them.
Yeah.
Another one that I wanted to bring up. Oh, you can still dig some of those up, right? The ET games.
Yeah, I heard very recently that some I don't know who did it, but some people put them up for bid, that you can bid on one and you can actually receive one. You can buy one and just have it as like a collector's item. I thought that was pretty neat, but I don't know how much it costs.
Yeah, they're really expensive now.
I imagine.
Like they're a collector's item now. But you couldn't give them away back then. They literally threw them away in a garbage heap.
Yeah.
But yeah, that's not the only flop. We talked about Cyberpunk, that being such a massive flop.
Unfortunate. Oh, I remember that game that I was talking about earlier that was a lot like Destiny and Destiny 2 but wasn't Destiny. It's Anthem. I
Yeah,
don't I don't even know if anybody remembers Anthem anymore, but that just goes to show how much it flopped.
yeah, absolutely. Another one, Duke Nukem Forever. They wanted to play on that nostalgia. They wanted to play on that nostalgia of the original Duke Nukem games, and it came out in a different world because the original Duke Nukem game came out. Cold War had just kind of wrapped up, and it was like seedy underbelly, lots of sexual stuff and all that. And
Yeah.
that wasn't quite flying the same in 2011.
No.
So when they tried to remake that game, it was garbage.
Yeah.
But yeah, that was one hell of a flop. And I was looking at some of these other games, like the 2006 release of Sonic the Hedgehog. I didn't even know they had a release in 2006 of Sonic the Hedgehog.
You didn't?
Nope.
Oh my god, bro. That one is iconic because Sonic kisses the whammon.
Really?
He kisses the human whammon.
Damn.
Yes, it was really weird. The way that they did that game is just so, man. Man, you gotta at least watch a playthrough of Sonic 06. It's like The Room. It's so bad it's good. You have to.
Yeah, well, I might check that out because, like I said, I never even knew that thing came out. And you'd think that a major brand like that, like Sonic the Hedgehog, you'd think it'd be successful, but that just goes to prove that unless you actually put out a good product, it's not going to do well. I'm looking at another one that came out in 2010, riding on the coattails of Guitar Hero and Rock Band. They tried to come out with Def Jam Rap Star.
Oh god.
I remember this. Didn't they have to censor some stuff because
They did.
'cause they yeah, they had
They
some
did.
questionable songs on there. I mean, it wasn't questionable for the people who listened to it, but to have it in a video game, it was questionable.
Yeah, and like something that's always kind of blown my mind, especially as of late, is the budgets that a lot of these games have to go through or go.
I'm sweating.
Yeah, they like we're talking movie budgets, all right?
Mm-mm.
We're talking hundreds of millions of dollars. So if they don't sell those, millions of copies, that's pretty bad. That's a fuck up. So
I'm out of the job,
yeah, so
basically.
like there's games like No Man's Sky.
Oh, rest in peace.
Yeah,
I'm
like
so excited.
that. Like I don't understand like why that one quite flopped so hard. I never really saw much about it.
Oh, really?
Yeah. Well, keep in mind, 2016, I was busy doing. 2016, I was very. I'll just say I was very busy. It was
That's
a crazy
fine.
year for me.
Yeah.
So
Yeah.
yeah, it came out in 2016, and apparently it did not do well.
It did. Man, listen, really? Okay, what it all boils down to with No Man's Sky is it really fell into hype culture is basically what it boils down to because the dev, which I can't remember the name escapes me. I apologize. I have so much room in my brain for only so many gamer facts. But the dev had hyped up the game so much as being super expansive. Every planet is unique, every monster unique. You can go to a world and no other player would ever discover this world. That's how big it was supposed to be. And it was
Wow.
supposed to have a lot of shit in it that you could do. And it just turned out that everything that was procedurally generated within this world was so highly repetitive that it didn't matter. It didn't matter what what kind of planet that you ended up in, because it was all going to be the same. You had the same sort of missions everywhere, and the fact that you could not come across another player actually ended up being detrimental, because it's like, what's the point of this huge expansive world that had
Right.
asynchronous online connectivity if you never see a single person, or even interact with their creations, or interact with anything that they had named? Because the idea was that you could go to each of these planets and you discover, quote unquote, a creature, or you'll discover, quote unquote, a plant, and then you get to name it whatever you want. But then if you can't ever see this planet just by playing online, what's the point? You know?
Yeah. All becomes kind of pointless at that point. Like,
Right.
Yeah, I get that. Like, now I understand it, because like when I first heard about it, which was very little, I just heard that it was this massive game that you could play for hours and hours and like not repeat the same thing, kind of deal.
Mm-hmm. It
Um,
ended up being, that was its detriment. You can play
Damn.
hours and hours, but what was the point?
So another thing that I want to talk about real quick, kind of on that same flop thread. So the original video games like Pong and the original Atari and everything, their budgets were minuscule.
Mm-hmm.
We're talking with whatever the guy had in his bank account, that kind of budget. Budgets now are a little bit different. I want to put into perspective a little bit just how inflated some of these budgets are for some of these big project games. When I say it's comparable to movies, I mean it. For example, Star Wars: The Old Republic, that had a $200 million budget. Star Citizen, I've never even heard of this game, Star Citizen, and that has a budget of $339 million plus dollars.
Yeah, that's
Now,
rough, buddy.
to put that into perspective, Pirates of the Caribbean holds the record for the largest budget movie of all time, and that's $378 million. So we're talking literally the same type of budgets.
Mm-hmm.
So, like, we're not talking a little bit of money here. We're talking billions and billions of dollars. So it's no surprise that, like, when you look at it in that context, that microtransactions have become such a necessity for some of these companies. Why the mentality of we have to make every dollar we possibly can comes out of these companies, because the budgets have become so large that in order to compete, you have to go above and beyond. Which is sad because, like we mentioned, the game doesn't have to be that spectacular visually or anything like that. It can be Among Us. It could be, Undertale, and still do very, very well. And I think that's something that's kind of being lost from the origins of video games, because the origins of video games were just about having some fun.
Yeah.
It was Pong. It was Pac-Man. Those games were not complex. They were simple and entertaining. And I think that formula can still work today. It just isn't being used as well as it probably could be.
Right. And actually, you could say all you want that gamers are the problem, which I don't necessarily agree nor disagree with that. What I feel like it's shareholders and corporate folk that think they know what gamers want.
Yep.
And it's very clear that very recently you can actually attest to things like Bravely Default. You can attest to things like Octopath Traveler. You can attest to a lot of these very, like, actually going back to its roots, turn-based RPG games that have come out recently. And you can see, oh, actually they are very successful. And look, they didn't need all the fancy graphics. They're all pixelated and shit. But you know what it does have? It has a great story. It has incredible gameplay. It's just fucking fun. then that's all you really need. And you know what? The budget for those was not nearly as high.
Yeah, and you hit the nail on the head right there. At the end of the day, it's just got to be fun.
Yeah.
And I think that's kind of one of the big takeaways from video game history as a whole. Yeah, they have the context, they have the budget, they have the money, they have the investment, they have the fan base, they have the brand loyalty. But at the end of the day, a game has to be fun.
Yeah, has to be fun. Otherwise, why you play it for? I guess
Exactly.
you could play it for narrative, I guess. But I'm not gonna play something that makes me depressed.
Yeah.
Actually, no, that's a lie.
Well,
I played To the Moon and it made me depressed, but it was very good.
you won't play it repeatedly.
Yeah.
You have to be in the right mood for it.
Yeah.
But yeah, that's something that's always been, like, ever since I started doing some research on this, which is probably about the last month or so.
Oh my god, that long? Wow.
Yeah, well, in research terms, that's not very long still, but
I
but-
feel so special. You researched for like a whole month just for this. Wow.
Well, yeah, I researched for a whole month for 3 hours of dialogue, and that's how being a historian works.
I feel so special. Thank you for investing 3 hours. Wait, no, a whole month.
And yeah, Cassie's laughing in the background. Wait a second. There's a Pac-Man RPG?
Yeah.
Pac-Man RPG? That sounds legit. That sounds right.
No way.
Yes, I love the fuck out of it.
Damn. Okay.
I see the To the Moon fans in the chat. I see you. To the Moon's the best. It's so good. To the Moon also a game where it's literally made in RPG Maker, which you can get on Steam, on sale most of the time, and it is a fantastic game, and it is a game that will make you cry, and it's not necessarily fun in a gameplay sense because you literally just walk around and you talk to people. That's the game, but fantastic game, and it's successful.
Um. Yeah. Cassie just showed me about the Pac-Man game. You walk around and it's an RPG.
Oh my god, show me the Pac-Man RPG. Dark internet, show me the Pac-Man RPG.
Yeah, that's damn. Okay. That not what I expected to see.
Incredible. Pac-Man World. Oh my god, we're gonna go into the wiki for this one. It looks like shit. The PlayStation can recreate mind-boggling graphics.
Well, when that first PlayStation came out, it really was mind-boggling.
Yes.
Was it PlayStation 1 or PlayStation 2 that Oddworld came out?
Ooh, I think Oddworld seems like PlayStation 2.
Yeah, I remember like just flipping out at the cutscenes in that game because it looked like it was a movie. And
Yeah, Oddworld was kind of, that one was also very of its time, I feel like, because you don't really get FMVs or not FMVs, excuse me, CG cutscenes like that anymore.
Yep. And that's something I was going to bring up, like Final Fantasy. The Final Fantasies of that era did the same thing. They had those big cutscenes.
Yeah, the full like pre-render cutscene. That shit was actually, of its time. If you look at it right now, it's kind of like whatever, right? But like of its time, inspirational. Very cool.
Yeah, like And I just those moments. Little side note: those moments are always the time when that's when a parent would walk in and be like, "Hey, I need you to do something," and like, "I can't pause."
Yeah, yeah. I can't pause a cutscene, Mom.
Yeah, it's those cutscenes were always something special to look forward to.
Yeah.
I have Cassie looking up a video game sales over time kind of chart or video to share because it really is something that's cool to look at to see how it was super diverse and then all of a sudden these three companies just took over.
Yeah.
I think it's this one right here.
I think I have heard Child of Light, but I've never played it myself. There's a lot of really small, darling games that I have actually either heard but not played or never heard of before, but yeah, I'm a avid enjoyer of indie titles. Oh, you posted the video. Is it a short video? Because my attention span is whack, Cassie.
Well, it's not so much for you; it's for the people in the chat.
Okay.
It's what, probably 3 minutes, 2 minutes. It shows the 40 years of sales in 2 minutes. So if you want to put that on your screen, or I could put it on mine. Nah, I don't feel like putting it on mine.
Lazy.
Not so much lazy. It's just I don't know how to do it.
I have my iPad thing.
Then people can click on it if they want.
Yes.
There it is. See, that's when PlayStation shows up. You see, Game Boy was like king. And then when PlayStation showed up, Nintendo market share just started shrinking.
Mm-hmm.
And between PlayStation 1 and PlayStation 2, just out of nowhere, like it just was complete market domination at that point until Xbox came out.
There's a very funny interview that Reset Era, I think it's Reset Era, or man, I can't remember. He's such a famous video game journalist now. He reviews games a lot, and he's incredibly funny. But anyway, he went to Japan, and one of his most iconic clips from his interviews was he went around and asked people in Shibuya if they owned an Xbox. And so many of them were just like, what is an Xbox?
Yep. Yeah, and now there's like when the PlayStation and Xbox and Nintendo first started coming out, like if you had one, you were king of the block. Now, like that's when the console wars really picked up because people couldn't really afford to get all the consoles.
Nah.
You could pick one if you were lucky. And like my family, we chose the PlayStation.
My family chose Nintendo.
Yeah. So it's really horrific for me to see when I'm like searching online or whatever, seeing people with like 4 or 5 or 6 systems.
Yeah,
like I see the wall that has a PlayStation 5, an Xbox, whatever the new Xbox is.
Xbox Series X.
Yeah, the Series X. Then they got a 360. They got the PlayStation 3, PlayStation 4, you know. Like, I'm looking at that like, you have all the systems. You have the Switch and the Wii and the Wii U and, like, how? And, like, at that moment, like, when you see stuff like that, that's when you realize, shit, we're getting old.
Yeah. Well, okay. I might be an outlier because I work in the games industry, so it is my job. But I do have almost all the Nintendo consoles, and I have I currently have a PlayStation 4. I am not interested in picking up a PlayStation 5 because I am very old man yells at cloud, and I don't feel like I should have to wait in a queue for a chance to buy a console.
Yup.
I should just be able to go into a store and buy a console and not have to pay premium membership just for the chance to get in line. The chance to get in line to perhaps put it in my cart. Nuts. Absolutely nuts.
Yeah, it's like that is one of the signs that things are getting completely out of control.
Yeah.
Yeah, and who knows?
Yeah.
Like who knows? Maybe in the near future, maybe in 10 years from now, we'll look back and be having a conversation about how this system came out of nowhere and completely destroyed the big three. Like we don't know. And it's been kind of stagnant as far as systems go over the last 20 years. It's been, for all intents and purposes, it's been those big three companies.
Yeah.
Now
Well,
that being
okay.
said,
Mhm.
there's also the companies that are making the games, which that is as expansive as ever.
Right.
Some are sadly not as popular as they used to be. Like for example, Konami. With that
I got
Konami code.
words. Yep.
You know, that was everything when it came to gaming. You knew you were a gamer when you had that memorized.
Up, down, A, B, left. Wait, no. Up, down, left, right, A, B, start. Select, sometimes.
Yeah, like everybody who played those games still remembers it. So yes, games or not games, but gaming companies, they come and go, they ebb and flow, but some of them have been able to weather the storm for the entirety of the existence of video game consoles. And that kind of consistency and staying power is something that's to be respected.
Yeah.
Dang, those were the days. Yeah, that Konami code. So you mentioned indie makers.
Yes. Indie devs.
Yeah. So
Shout
hit me with some of those. Like, which ones are you like in particular? Are there any that you're thinking about?
Yes. Kongao, I'm gonna shout him out again. The creator of To the Moon. The creator of A Bird Story. Fantastic. It's like very, very small. A lot of people probably have not heard of To the Moon, but it is one of those games where you really need to play it just because the story is just so heart-wrenching. It really makes you go through it. Um uh Obviously Undertale, Deltarune, everybody knows those. But a lot of other indie titles that I particularly enjoy. There is actually one of my pals. Um, they go by Insert Disc 5 on Twitter, and they put out a game that you can purchase on Steam. That is, hold up, let me actually go find the link really quick. And it is a game made on RPG Maker. But don't let that dissuade you, because it is a fantastic game narratively, stylistically. They did all of the art for the game. Let me actually pull up the Steam thing. Where can I find my recently purchased goods on Steam? For real, where can you find your recently purchased games on Steam?
Yeah, I got nothing.
Recently played? No. Recently purchased. Where is it? But while I'm going through my Steam list, I can just go through it. Disco Elysium is sort of an indie dev, but well, they started as indie, but now they're not indie anymore, really. You should check that out if you really like narrative games. Um, what else is here? Later Alligator. I gotta shout out Later Alligator. That's a fantastic game. That is also more of like a visual novel type of game. You see, a lot of indie games are visual novel type stories, but they're very good. Omori, if you like classic RPGs in the style of Mother, or Undertale, you will like Omori. It is a psychological horror RPG, which it doesn't seem like it when you first play it, but just wait. Oh, I found it! Yes, let's go! Hold on. I'm gonna post this link in both chats because I really, really love this game. It is very emotional and also very like homey. It feels very like home to play it because it feels like Earthbound, it feels like Undertale, it feels like, all those types of games. It's really, really good.
You said you were going to put a link for that, or? Yeah, there it is.
Yeah,
okay.
I just posted it in the thing. Also, Omori. I think you can just literally search up Omori. That's Omori. And it was literally on sale not too long ago for the summer sale. So yeah, wait for it to go on sale again. It will eventually. Omori is a fantastic psychological horror game. It has several different endings, depending on your actions and who you manage to keep into your party. No spoilers. But yeah, it's a fantastic indie game. And all of these games that I'm talking about, they are not great, like, graphically. Like, it doesn't need to be. The game that I posted the link in the chat, my friend Adrian did all of the art for it.
That's amazing.
And that's all it needs. It's charming. It's fun. And that's all you need.
So, one last topic before we wrap things up.
Sure.
Video game movie adaptations.
Okay. Okay.
So the first one that I can think of is Mortal Kombat. I think that was the first video game movie that I saw that I can remember. I might be wrong on that. But as far as I remember, Mortal Kombat was the first one. Super Mario Brothers, I don't want to count that because that movie was garbage.
Okay, listen. Okay, listen. That is maybe my guilty pleasure movie.
No way.
I
All right, and with that, ladies and gentlemen, we're gonna call it night.
No, wait, give me a chance. Hold on. Let me say something real quick. Super Mario Brothers movie is one of those things where you just gotta watch it. Watch it with an open mind. It is wild that they greenlit that movie, first of all. Second of all, you have to understand how actually creative it is that they made Goombas look like that. That they made Dennis Hopper Bowser, King Koopa, basically. Come on, it's got John Leguizamo in it. It's just watch it again. Just watch it again and don't take it serious. It's actually really fun. It's my guilty pleasure.
I don't know if I want to give that movie another try. That's
no, come on.
That's a trauma thing for me, I guess.
Just once.
I remember watching it the first time and thinking this could be about Super Mario Brothers going to rescue their princess in a castle.
Yeah.
Yeah.
Make
really?
it a channel goal.
Really, Mari? You're going to take their side? I see how it is.
Make it a channel goal. Make it a thing on your stream where if you get like, I don't know, so many followers or so many channel point things, you're gonna watch it.
Okay.
Do a watch party.
All right, bet. I'll do that.
Yes.
Okay, so I just looked it up, and Mario Brothers came out before Mortal Kombat. So, yeah, it looks like Mario Brothers was the first one. So Mortal
yes,
Kombat came out in '95, the original Mortal Kombat movie. And that one was really cool, like as far as the reception that it got, because it got decent reception. But after that, there were some decent movies that came out of it that at some point people forgot were actually video games to begin with. Two that I'm thinking of, first and foremost, Silent Hill.
Interesting. I think a lot of people actually did not. Well, okay. I think that it was mixed reception for the people who played Silent. I am of the opinion that it is an okay movie.
Yeah. The movie was fun. And the characters were pretty cool. It wasn't really true to the game as that much.
No.
But it's funny because a lot of people who are fans of the movie have no idea that it was a video game first.
It's interesting to me.
Yeah, it really is. Another one that is Tomb Raider. There's a lot of people who don't know that Tomb Raider was actually a video game first. And then
that's wild to me.
Yeah, and the biggest shock to me, there's a lot of people who don't know that Resident Evil was a video game before it was a movie.
No.
They think the video game came out after the movie.
Oh my god.
Yeah, I've run into this with students at work, talking to them about movies and video games and stuff like that. And they have no idea that Resident Evil was a game long before it was a movie. They thought that the games, the more recent ones, came out because of the movie.
Bro.
And it's really shocking to me because at the same time I really shouldn't be shocked, because there's also people who think that Pearl Harbor was an amazing movie. But it didn't happen in real life. It's just a movie.
I see.
Like, I remember once where I was doing student teaching, and the teacher wanted to watch Pearl Harbor, the movie. A student raised their hands and asked, "Why are we watching this movie? It's just an action flick. What's it have to do with history?"
Oh.
So I shouldn't be shocked that people don't know about Resident Evil, the video game, and Tomb Raider, the video game, and Silent Hill, the video game. However, that being said, I think it shows just how good some of these games are. That the plot lines, the main characters, the themes of the movie can be adapted that easily to or not a movie. The themes of the video game and everything can be adapted to movies that easily.
I think there are some games that probably did not fly as well, but an attempt was made. One instance of that is the Monster Hunter movie. If anybody who is a fan of Monster Hunter has ever seen the Monster Hunter movie, whack. Absolutely whack. For a Monster Hunter movie, there ain't that much monsters in it, y'all. But you know what? That's fine, I guess. It was a movie, and it wasn't terrible, but it sure wasn't Monster Hunter.
Yeah, another one that was just absolutely horrible, like depressingly bad, Blood Rain. Blood Rain was a good one. video game wise, but then movie not so much. So yeah, there's hits and misses. There's hits and misses.
We gotta address the elephant in the room that is the new Mario Brothers movie that Nintendo wants to put out starring Chris Pratt.
Wait, what?
You don't know about this?
No. Remember, I'm a historian. My head is under a book.
Bro, okay, I'm about to destroy your life right now. I'm so sorry. In one of the most recent Nintendo Directs, they fucking announced Miyamoto himself, the man of God, literally came out into the Direct and he was like, I would like to introduce a new concept for you. And that is a new Mario Brothers movie starring Chris Pratt as Mario.
And Charlie Day.
Wow.
And Charlie Day of Always Sunny fame is going to be Luigi, which I actually think that's pretty good casting.
That...
I'm sorry to ruin your life like this.
Damn, what?
Hold on, I'm gonna ruin your life even more. Let's do this right now. I'm gonna pull up the cast of the Mario Brothers movie that's supposed to happen. Alright. 2022 cast. Okay. Seth Rogen is going to be Donkey Kong. Jack Black is going to be Bowser.
Fuck.
Keegan-Michael Key of Key and Peele is going to be Toad.
What?
Fred Armisen of Saturday Night Live fame going to be Cranky Kong. And that's all they've announced. Charles Martinet will be a cameo role. The actual voice of Mario will be a cameo role.
It's gonna be the Stan Lee of the movie.
And now I see that the chat is popping off in despair. I'm so sorry.
Yeah, that's that I don't know what to think about this.
Yep.
The only question is it gonna be better than the original Mario Brothers movie?
Man, I don't know. I think for me, Charlie Day might make it that way. But it really depends on how they do it. I cannot imagine Seth Rogen as Donkey Kong. What the hell is he gonna do?
Well, I'm guessing he's probably gonna be CGI.
No, but like, what? Donkey Kong doesn't talk. He just makes gorilla noises. Is he a gorilla?
Well, I mean, look at Vin Diesel as Groot.
I guess. No, wait, Groot says, I am Groot.
Look at Alan Tudyk as a chicken.
Yeah, okay. That's fair. Yeah, okay, that's fair, I guess.
To be fair, Alan Tudyk can be pretty much whatever he wants and make it look good.
Yeah, no, that's fair. He went to Juilliard for that.
Yep.
To star as a chicken.
Hey, I'm not gonna lie, that chicken stole the show.
The chicken was good. Hey was good.
As a matter of fact, for a while there, Hey Hey was my ringtone.
Really? That's really funny.
Yeah. Well, right now it's a squeaky toy and the screaming goats from Thor.
Oh my god, that's very funny.
I put the screaming goats as my work email alert.
That feels apt.
Yeah, it works. Get it? Because it's from my work email and it works.
Yes. I'm cringing.
But yeah, I think that's about as good a place as any to wrap this up.
Destroying your lives with the Mario Brothers cast.
Yeah. Yeah, my brain's kind of broken by that one.
You have to look up the actual announcement because it's so funny because Miyamoto is just like he's so cool about Chris Pratt and I lost my mind.
Wow.
It's very, very
They couldn't
good.
even find a pudgy dude to be Mario?
I guess it doesn't matter.
I'm just trying to picture Chris Pratt with a mustache.
I mean, he does have one.
He would look like a "Don't touch me, uncle."
Yeah, he looked like one of those guys that just needs the panel van.
Oh, I have no idea what you're talking about.
Yeah, put a mustache on Chris Pratt, and all he needs is the panel van and free
Oh my
candy
God.
sign.
I see. Incredible. Well, oh wait, hold on. Echo says, "Who would you get to voice Shadow for the Sonic movies?" Um,
Not a black guy.
not a black guy. Yep,
They gotta work
that's
out
the
some
smart
numbers.
answer. I would get Danny DeVito. Definitely.
That's another one that could have gone really badly very quickly. By the way, it's Sonic. Um, it ended up doing okay as far as video game adaptation movies go, but that whole controversy with his teeth.
God, it's so nightmarish. It's actually nightmare fuel.
Yeah. Yeah. Video game adaptations can go badly very quickly.
Yes. I almost wonder if they released
It did
that,
go bad. That's why they
like,
changed it. That's fair.
I almost wonder if they released that just as like a joke. But then I see how much they put their devs through crunch, and then I realize, yeah, that could not have been a joke. But that's kind of rough.
Yeah. I felt so bad for them.
Mm-hmm.
I mean, can you imagine? You put your life, your heart and soul into something. You work hours and hours and hours, and everybody's like, "Oh my God, that's the worst thing I've ever seen. Change it."
Yeah, the outcry, the fact that the outcry could do that at all is kind of nuts. Like, you don't really see that ever. Usually,
Well,
most corporations are just like, just deal with it, bro.
there is a precedent there. A
Mm.
little bit of a tangent. I don't know if you ever saw this TV show called Jericho.
No.
It was about nuclear bombs got set off in different cities in the United States, which caused the United States to split apart into multiple countries. And people had to survive in small towns and everything where the nuclear fallout wasn't going to get to them. This show had one season and got canceled after that first season. There was a public outcry, and because of this public outcry, the corporate offices of the channel that it was on got, I think it was like 10 tons of peanuts delivered to them.
What?
They literally filled the lobby with peanuts because one of the key lines in that show was a quote from Anthony Macalif from World War II. In World War II, he was surrounded by German military, and the German commander wrote a nice message that says, to the American commander, we're formally requesting your surrender. You will be given safe quarters, surrender your weapons, blah, 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 blah. Nice formal letter. To which Anthony Macalif responded to German commander, nuts.
Okay.
That was it.
These nuts.
Pretty much. So that kind of became an iconic moment in World War II. And in the show, they used it to show, never surrender. That's the mentality of the town, blah, blah, blah. So they sent nuts to the corporate offices of the show. And there's pictures online of an entire lobby just with peanuts to the ceiling. So, like, stuff like that has happened before. Where like a public outcry for a show or a movie or video game or whatever was enough that it changed the opinion or the decision of the company. I'm sure there's other examples but I can't think about it from the top of my head. There's one recently.
I have no brain cells.
Yeah, there was one recently that happened something similar, but yeah, but that kind of thing happens, which I think is cool. It shows the power of the market. It shows the power of the consumer when they're voting with their dollars and showing support with how they make their purchases and where they send their eyes, I guess, for in the case of TV.
I finished the thing.
I love it. That is the coolest thing ever.
Snack and sandwich.
I called you Snack. I hope you don't mind.
I'm good with it. I've come to accept it. I've come to accept it.
And I guess that's it. That's the whole show, gang.
So
Thank you so much for coming.
Yeah, this was my first collab with an artist on a stream, and I hope you had fun. I enjoyed this. We went overtime. I was planning on probably about 3 hours. We went 4.
Oh shit! I'm sorry. Fuck.
No, it's not a sorry. It's not a sorry. It's that's fucking cool.
Cool.
You didn't think it's been that long, did you?
Well, my usual stream is 4 hours, so I was just gonna go until I'm done.
But yeah, we've been on for about 4 hours, which is amazing, and I enjoyed every second. I really can't wait for us to do this again.
Yeah, absolutely.
I want to make you a recurring visitor for this stream.
Thank you. I appreciate it. I hope everybody had fun. It was a lot of fun to talk and chat. And like I mentioned in your DMs before we even started doing this, it's not very often that you'll have a lot of opportunities to talk about the current climate of politics in games, because it's usually a very sensitive, hot button topic that nobody likes to talk about. I appreciate being able to have the opportunity to talk about it. And I hope everyone enjoyed their time.
Yeah, I can't wait for us to do this again, and I'm gonna go ahead and hop off of voice chat, and I'll do my wrap up stuff, and
Sure.
I'll probably get back on with you in a couple minutes. I'm just gonna mute it. Actually, I'm gonna mute it.
Sure, that's fine.
So I can do my outro kind of thing, and I'll talk to you in a few minutes.
Sure. Bye, Snack Stream. All right. Yeah. Now that I'm like live. Oh, I don't know if I should mute my mic on the Discord. Let me mute my mic so you can't hear me.